The story begins in the year 1390 of the stellar calendar on the northern continent, the last fortified stronghold of mankind, Swinwu City. The streets were engulfed in towering flames, and savage Taoti beasts were devouring humans everywhere. Survivors scattered in panic, desperately trying to escape the relentless hunt. Just as a mother bent down to lift her fallen son, a massive Taoti locked onto them. The beast reached out, ready to snatch them up and swallow them whole. A golden longsword ripped through the air. A single strike instantly obliterated the beast. In the next heartbeat, the creatures surrounding the mother and son were cut down by a barrage of flying swords, collapsing into lifeless bodies. The one responsible for all of it was the male lead, Song Yongxiang, piloting the Abyss Core battle armor. Over 100 years old, he was the last Saint-rank Star Soul Master humanity had left. For decades, he had relied on the Star Lord system he obtained from a hidden realm. Alone, he guarded mankind's final bastion, preserving a fragile chance for the remnants of humanity to survive. But today, faced with a beast horde surging like a tidal wave, no matter how many combat mechs he deployed to fight back, it was ultimately futile. When the final group of survivors boarded the spacecraft evacuating Earth, the Star-Lord system informed Song Yongxiang that he had already missed the optimal evacuation window. Song Yongxiang stood there, his body covered in wounds. He watched as the spacecraft slowly lifted off. The system actually suggested redirecting the enemy's attention toward the ship, buying himself time to retreat. On the screen, he saw the terrified eyes of the mother and son he had saved earlier. This time, he chose not to run. After fighting for so many years, he was tired. As long as humanity's spark remained, it would rise again one day. If he wasn't going to retreat, then this would be his final contribution to mankind. Once, he had been mocked by classmates for his crippled soul vein, and even his own father had cast him out because of it. The woman he loved had left him for someone else, and yet now, he had become humanity's last hope. To ensure that mankind's flame would endure, he and his battle armor ignited into a blazing inferno, dragging every last beast with him, taking them all down with him. But just when he believed he had died, a voice called out to him from within the darkness. When he opened his eyes, he discovered he had somehow been reborn. Carrying all the memories of his past life, he had returned to his 18-year-old self. According to his memories from his past life, the Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy he attended would soon be destroyed in the beast tide that was about to erupt. Countless classmates and instructors would fight to the death to defend it, and back then, he had been nothing but a loser with a crippled soul vein. All he could do was watch his teachers and classmates charge forward one after another, while he stood there, powerless. In his previous life, they mocked him because he could only maintain his Star Soul armor for 3 minutes, calling him 3-Minute Man. Even his girlfriend's family broke off their engagement over it. Later, when his father chose to stand and die with the city, he had been driven away for being too weak. The true love he finally found had also died tragically right before his eyes. But this time, he had been reborn with over 60 years of knowledge and battle experience. Even the Star-Lord system had returned with him, so he would correct every regret from his past life, and the demons that haunted him for decades would finally be erased. Yet today, at the Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy, another freshman had just arrived. Following directions from the bald security guard at the gate, the newcomer searched for the freshman registration office, only to get lost and wander into a dead-end alley. With no other choice, he reinforced himself with soul power, then vaulted clean over the tall wall in a single leap. What appeared before him was not the registration office, but the women's locker room. And of all people, the class monitor. He yawned, locked eyes with him inside. In an instant, both of them were red-faced, and the pervert label was practically stamped onto him. A group of female students charged after him, swinging knives, spears, and sticks like they meant business. Before long, he was hogtied and dragged straight into the principal's office. The freshman's name was Lu Yan, currently an early yellow rank Star Soul Master. He had been specially admitted thanks to his outstanding performance at the Star Soul Preparatory Academy. The principal promptly assigned him to Class 10, the infamous gathering place for problem children. Class monitor. Yan puffed up like an angry pufferfish, her cheeks turning bright red. After receiving his student file, she shot him a murderous glare and said, "Follow me, student! Lu Yan! We're heading to logistics to pick up your uniform." After the two left, Secretary Xiao Yu reported to Principal Gu Shijing, "We've received a missing person report. Assistant Instructor Cheng Yi states that Class 10 student Noah 16, Song Yongxiang, has been absent for 3 days and remains unreachable." The report was referring to none other than the male lead, Song Yongxiang. According to the last classmate who saw him, he had muttered something like, 3 days left, before vanishing without a trace. What exactly happened that caused Song Yongxiang to disappear right after being reborn? According to legends from the eastern continent, thousands of years ago, colossal beasts suddenly descended upon the world. They slaughtered and devoured every intelligent life form and trace of civilization without restraint. Humanity had almost no power to resist and came within a breath of extinction. At humanity's darkest hour, immortals descended from the heavens, forged bones from starlight, in shells from condensed souls, and summoned external entities known as Star Soul Generals, driving back the beasts with supreme divine power. After that war, the Immortals left behind soul jades that housed the Star Soul Generals. These jades would choose those destined to become heroes, granting them the power of the Star Soul Generals, and they also passed down secret techniques for cultivating the 2 Star Soul Meridians. Over time, these individuals came to be known as Star Soul Masters. With the protection of the Star Soul Masters and their Star Soul Generals, humanity gradually grew stronger. About 1,000 years ago, a human sage replicated the Immortals' methods and created mass-produced Star Soul Generals. From then on, Star Soul Masters were followed by countless supporters, carving out new territory across lands ravaged by beasts. The founding principle of Nanzo Mecha Martial Academy was the hero chosen by the Star Soul General, Zuo Ci. Piloting Zuo Ci, he secured the Nanzo territory for the Tiandu Kingdom and established the academy 400 years ago. His Star Soul General later transformed into a Soul Jade, sealed within this statue, guarding the academy while awaiting the next chosen hero. Class Monitor. He-Yan proudly recounted the academy's glorious history to the freshman beside her, Lu-Yan. The hot-blooded boy immediately swore to become a hero like the founding principal, setting his sights on the 8 generals of Tiandu and the title of strongest Star Soul Master. At that very moment, the statue of Zuo Ci towering before them trembled slightly. He-Yan instantly recognized it as a fluctuation caused by soul power resonance. Could this fool Lu Yan really be the next host of Zuo Ci? Not long after collecting their uniforms, Lu Yan and He-Yan arrived at the academy's training arena. 2 students were already locked in combat, piloting mass-produced Wei Yuan-type mechs. It didn't take long for the red mech to fall to the blue one. The instructors evaluated the match. Although blue had won, the sluggish and drawn-out style drew criticism from Instructor Ope. Instructor Ope then arranged for Lu Yan and the class monitor to compete in the next round. Hearing this, the class monitor's blood surged with excitement. Finally, a chance to give that peeping pervert a proper beating. Both sides produced their standard-issue soul talismans and initiated Star Soul Assembly. Soon, the 2 stood facing each other in their student mechs, still fuming. The class monitor went straight on the offensive, leaping toward Lu Yan with dual swords in hand. Lu Yan could only retreat step by step, drawing his blade to block her relentless assault. On the sidelines, Instructor Cheng Yi kept joking about Lu Yan's refusal to take the offensive, just dodging and running the whole time. But Instructor Ope cut in. Don't underestimate him. His footwork looks chaotic, but every single step narrowly avoids He-Yan's strikes. Lu Yan knew He-Yan was 2 minor realms above him, which meant a clear gap in mech performance. For now, creating distance was his only option. The class monitor switched to a crossbow cannon for ranged attacks, but she clearly lacked fine control over soul-powered shots, and the firepower dropped instantly. Watching Lu Yan hop around like a frantic rabbit, He-Yan trembled with frustration. She drew her sword and poured every ounce of soul power into the blade. The students outside immediately recognized it as her ultimate move. There was no way Lu Yan could dodge this, shield or not. Sure enough, the next second He-Yan launched a move nicknamed Angry Crow Takes Flight, diving straight down toward him. Then she followed up with Tornado Destroys Trailer Park, smashing Lu Yan's mech into scrap metal. Just as everyone assumed Lu Yan had lost, Instructor Ope suddenly declared Lu Yan the winner. Though his mech was heavily damaged, his sword had already been pressed against the class monitor's vital point. He simply chose not to strike. The instructors then gathered all the students in the plaza, preparing for a post-match review. The bright sky abruptly darkened. The academy's defense alarms blared across the night. Spatial rifts began tearing open in the air around the campus. One Taudi beast after another crawled out of the fractures. Was Nanzo Mecha Martial Academy about to fall once again? Ever since the alien Taudi beasts appeared, the city had been suffering massive destruction. They launched indiscriminate attacks against civilians. Countless citizens didn't even get the chance to run for their lives. Even the Mecha Martial Academy became one of their primary targets. Instructor Cheng Yi piloted his mech and managed to hold off the first wave, but the beast's assault was overwhelming. His mech's damage level shot up to 70% almost instantly. Thankfully, the soul armor could regenerate using the pilot's own soul power. The beasts gave him no breathing room, regrouping almost immediately for another strike. Lu Yan and He-Yan both wanted to rush into the fight, but Instructor Ope ordered them to retreat and charge straight into the heart of the battle alone. Just as a beast lunged at Cheng Yi with its gaping maw, Instructor Ope crashed into the front line in his own mech. Suddenly, another beast attempted to ambush them from behind. Its massive claws seemed to slow down for a split second, as if restrained by something unseen. That brief interference gave Ope the opening he needed. One clean slash, and the touty was down, but the beasts kept pouring in without end. With only 2 mechs, there was no way they could hold the line. As Lu Yan and He Yan were retreating, several unidentified flying objects appeared in the sky above the academy. At that moment, Ope received a call from the academy's command center. The unknown craft were reinforcements from the academy. They linked up and formed a temporary squadron. The squadron was placed directly under Ope's command. Their mission: hold the training arena sector and prevent the beast from spreading further. As the Weiyuan-type mechs of the Student Council's discipline unit descended from the sky, reinforcements officially arrived. Ope issued orders instantly. Instructors and rescue teams formed a 12-mech anti-beast formation, the Tiger Wing formation. They swore to protect the students behind them at all costs. While the academy forces were locked in a bloody battle, a mysterious figure, piloting an equally mysterious mech, appeared beside the statue of Zuo Ci. What was he planning? Meanwhile, Principal Gu watched the live battlefield feed with a tense expression. Acting Liaison Xiao Yu continued delivering updates. All reinforcement squads had reached the front line. A containment perimeter centered around the spatial rift had been successfully established. Principal Gu gave the order, all non-Zhou Academy units, hold your positions. The beasts must not break past the perimeter. The frontline battle intensified. The temporary squadron members fought shoulder to shoulder like brothers in arms. But Lu Yan and He Yan, who had just retreated moments ago, were now being relentlessly chased by a stray beast. It was closing in fast. As class monitor, He Yan made a split-second decision. She ordered Lu Yan to retreat toward underground entrance number 9, while she stayed behind to cover him. She turned, summoned her Weiyuan-type mech, and initiated Star Soul assembly. In the next second, she intercepted the pursuing beast head-on, but the strength gap was obvious. The beast seized her mech's head in one crushing grip. Even while pinned down, she shouted for Lu Yan to get out. Hearing this, anger surged through Lu Yan. Why was he always the one running? Why did he have to watch others sacrifice themselves for him? They were both Star Soul masters. Why was he so weak? If only he had a Star Soul general. The thought hit him like a spark of lightning. He had resonated with the statue of Zuo Ci earlier. What if he was the true next host? With that power, he could return and lead everyone to victory. Without hesitation, he rushed toward the statue of Zuo Ci. He shouted again and again, begging for its power to save them all. But when he finally stood before the statue, he saw the real protagonist, Song Yongxiang, missing for 3 days, standing there, and in his hand was Zuo Ci's soul jade. Rewind to before the beast tide erupted today. Song Yongxiang had been cultivating in his dormitory, pushing for a breakthrough. After 3 days and a mountain of pills, he advanced from early yellow rank to yellow rank peak, though his crippled soul vein remained an issue. In his previous life, he hadn't obtained the reforging pill to repair his crippled soul vein until his 50s, but the pill's grade had been too low, leaving permanent side effects. In battle, he had to constantly rely on soul replenishing pills just to maintain his power. This time, if he could refine a high-grade reforging pill, his crippled soul vein could be completely restored. So he had pre-ordered the final ingredient from the largest alchemy shop in the city. Unfortunately, the clerk informed him the shipment was still in transit and wouldn't arrive until noon. According to his past life memories, the academy would fall to the beast tide tonight. That meant he had only a few hours left to set up defensive arrays across campus. His goal was to minimize casualties as much as possible. With his current strength, he could only deploy low-tier slowing arrays. These were techniques he had picked up in the northern continent in his previous life. Mere basics back then, yet far beyond anything currently practiced in the eastern continent by over a century. At that moment, he overheard the class monitor explaining the statue of Zuo Ci to Lu Yan. The scene dragged him back to his past life, when he had stumbled here like a stray dog, begging the statue for power, only to receive silence. But this time was different. He immediately ordered the Star-Lord system to scan the statue. The system quickly pinpointed the location of Zuo Ci's soul jade and asked whether to forcibly draw it out. That was what caused the faint tremor in the statue earlier, leading the unaware class monitor to assume Lu Yan had triggered soul power resonance. However, the soul jade was still unbound at the time and couldn't be duplicated. So, Song Yongxiang withdrew and chose not to force the extraction. Just then, word came from the pharmacy. The final ingredient he had ordered, the heavenly dragon stem, had finally arrived. As long as the reforging pill succeeded, he wouldn't let his classmates die in vain this time. Shortly afterward, Song Yongxiang arrived at Nanzhou Grand Pharmacy. A receptionist guided him inside. In the VIP section, he was received by a white-haired beauty, but the price of the heavenly dragon stem was staggering. Short on cash, Song Yongxiang decided to trade pills he had refined himself. The attendant initially refused with a helpless smile, but when she saw the Tier 3 soul replenishing pill, her attitude shifted instantly. The quality of every pill laid on the table surpassed what the pharmacy itself could usually obtain, and some she couldn't even name. In the end, she could only plead pitifully for a chance to consult the shopkeeper. Song Yongxiang agreed, but requested to use the pharmacy's alchemy room. Unfortunately, the shop didn't have a resident alchemist. The original furnace had broken long ago, and no one had repaired it. Fortunately, in his previous life, he had studied void refinement from the spirit folk of the southern continent. Now, even without a furnace, he could refine pills barehanded. As Song Yangxiang began working inside the alchemy room, the attendant submitted the pills to the shopkeeper for review. The moment the shopkeeper recognized the Tier 5 blood ignition pill in his hand, his expression shifted instantly. He stared at the attendant in disbelief. Someone's actually selling this? When she confirmed it, he shot up from his chair in excitement and immediately demanded to meet the seller. But when they reached the alchemy room, they were met with a locked door. Song Yangxiang had set up a restriction array on it, making it impossible to open. Inside, the reforging pill he urgently needed had already been successfully refined. After swallowing the pill, he sat cross-legged on the spot, beginning the process of repairing his crippled soul veins. About 2 hours later, he stepped out of the alchemy room. He immediately saw the two waiting anxiously outside. After a round of polite flattery on both sides, shopkeeper Hong Fong got straight to the point. He was willing to offer 300,000 for the blood ignition pill, including the other pills. He'd rounded up to 500,000. Considering the extra a gesture of goodwill, Song Yangxiang pondered for a moment, then calmly pulled out 2 more blood ignition pills from his storage card. Altogether, 1 million. Deal? He proposed. Seeing the conflict flicker across Hong Fong's face, Song Yangxiang knew he had taken the bait. Hong Fong was almost certainly a collateral member of the Hong Merchant Guild, the power-backing Nanzhou Grand Pharmacy. In his previous life, the Hong Merchant Guild had been one of the 3 great merchant guilds of the Eastern Continent, controlling 70% of Tiandu Kingdom's medicinal and alchemy industries. The Hong family's influence ran deep through both political and commercial circles. After generations of accumulation, they were not only wealthier than nations, but possessed terrifying networks of connections and resources. In this life, if he wanted to withstand the beast tide looming on the horizon, he needed to build his own power base, and fast. Money, connections, resources, every piece mattered. Sure enough, when he entered the shopkeeper's office, Hong Fong issued Song Yangxiang a platinum VIP card, numbered 666. He even waived the remaining balance for the Heavenly Dragon Stem. After sealing the deal, Song Yangxiang left the pharmacy. What the shopkeeper didn't know was that he could casually refine piles of those pills whenever he wanted. Walking back toward the academy, a man dressed in black approaching from the opposite direction caught his attention. With the system's assistance, he detected that the man's soul power was concentrated in the middle dantian. That was a cultivation method unique to the northern nations. Could he be from the kingdom of Milun? The northern border of Tiandu Kingdom shared territory with Milun, one of the 3 nations that inherited the orthodox culture of the Eastern Continent. According to his memories, 3 years from now, the warmongering Milun would shatter the balance of power and launch a full-scale invasion against Tiandu. The war would drag the other human nations of the Eastern Continent into the conflict, eventually leading to its destruction. Why would someone from Milun appear in Nanzhou now? Could they be connected to the coming beast tide? As Song Yangxiang pondered this, a striking figure with crimson hair walked toward him. The sight instantly stirred memories he wished he could forget. Her name was A San, a female assassin from the mysterious organization Taiyuan, and the host of the Star Soul General Lu Bu. She followed Taiyuan's doctrine of universal love and non-attack, forcibly intervening in wars between nations to prevent humans from slaughtering one another. In his previous life, a fallen Song Yangxiang had crossed paths with A San on the battlefield. After surviving life and death situations together multiple times, they eventually became lovers. But in the end, she died right before his eyes, leaving behind a wound he never truly healed from. So when he saw her again this time, he reacted almost instinctively, turning and grabbing her arm, desperate to reclaim the bond they once shared. At that very moment, the Star-Lord system chimed in. Star Soul General Lu Bu successfully duplicated, then it hit him. At this point in time, this was their first meeting. As an assassin of Taiyuan, exposure of her identity meant certain death. She violently shook off his grip. A short assassin's blade materialized in her hand, and she lunged straight at him. To her shock, Song Yangxiang subdued both her hands in a single move. Just as she demanded to know how he knew Taiyuan's assassination techniques, he realized she was being tailed. Suddenly, the 2 soul-replenishing pills within his body erupted in searing pain. The agony forced him to curl up in the middle of the street. The men in black behind them moved in to close the distance. Without warning, Song Yangxiang dropped into a full split on the spot, blocking one of them mid-stride. The man stumbled and started cursing, only to be stopped by his companion. In the next instant, Song Yangxiang shamelessly switched tactics, stepping forward like a professional accident scammer. "Hey, hold it right there. You bump into me and think you can just walk away?" The hot-headed guy who had tripped was about to fire back with insults, but the bearded middle-aged man beside him leaned in and murmured, "Tiandu Secret Investigation Division on official duty. Kid, I suspect you're connected to a wanted suspect. You're coming with us." Song Yangxiang quickly realized something was off. They weren't from the Secret Investigation Division at all. In his previous life, he had served as a commander in the Tiandu Black Armor Guard and dealt with the division countless times. He slipped his hand into his pocket, deliberately revealing half of his student ID while casually uttering one of the division's coded phrases. To his surprise, the other side responded correctly. The bearded man immediately cupped his fists in greeting, then signaled his companions to withdraw, choosing to stay behind himself. "We are agents directly under the Tiandu Secret Investigation Division headquarters," he said seriously. "We're in the middle of an operation. You were seen in contact with our target. Care to explain?" Song Yongxiang scoffed. "You mean that Taiyuan assassin? The Nanzhou division has been tracking her for a while. If you hadn't interfered, I would have already caught her." After a few rounds of probing, the bearded man was thrown off. Their intel had never mentioned Nanzhou's involvement. Left with little choice, he decided to lure Song Yongxiang into the encirclement they had already prepared, to eliminate both him and the assassin at once. As they moved to regroup with the others, Song Yongxiang noticed again that the man's soul power was condensed in the middle dantian. Just like the black-clad figure earlier, Milun had already infiltrated this deep into Tiandu's heartland. A chilling thought crossed his mind. In his previous life, Nanzhou Academy had fallen during the Beast Tide, and the soul jade of Star Soul General Zuo Si had vanished. Could Milun's spies have been behind it? Just then, they passed a street vendor selling candied hawthorn skewers, Tongkulu. He remembered Asan loved these in his past life. Instantly, national grudges faded from his mind. Winning back his girl mattered more right now. He bought a skewer, took a quick bite to taste it, then hurried after the bearded man. Meanwhile, Asan had been forced into the trap laid by the men in black. She immediately summoned her mech, standing ready for battle. To everyone's shock, the mech was none other than the legendary Star Soul General Lu Bu. Surrounded on all sides while piloting Star Soul General Lu Bu, Asan carried herself with the same fearless presence as the legendary clash of the three heroes. Watching from the sidelines, Song Yongxiang asked casually, "You're making this kind of noise outside Yuanding City. Aren't you worried the garrison will notice?" The bearded man smirked. A Tier 5 spatial confinement array was set up in advance. They could tear the sky apart in here, and no one outside would sense a thing. As he spoke, he secretly began summoning his weapon. But the moment he moved, Song Yongxiang struck first, slamming him to the ground with a single palm. The leader of the black-clad squad noticed instantly and ordered his men to eliminate Song Yongxiang. They had badly underestimated him. Sword in hand, he weaved through the formation like a phantom. One step, one slash, one kill. Even a sword saint would have applauded. Still, sheer numbers forced him into a guerrilla rhythm. While maneuvering, he commanded the Star-Lord system to hack into the spatial array and seize control. Meanwhile, Asan's situation grew increasingly dire. The enemy had clearly studied her thoroughly. They deployed a star-imprisoning soul lock array, completely restraining Star Soul General Lu Bu. The formation dated back to an ancient civilization, designed specifically to capture Star Soul generals. She couldn't even deactivate her Star Soul construct. Milun's true objective was to forcibly extract Lu Bu's soul stone. As the extraction device began reading data, a blue light suddenly flared from the nearby forest. The Wei Yuan-type mechs assigned to capture Lu Bu were split clean in half by the beam. Even the soul chains binding Lu Bu shattered instantly. When Asan turned around in shock, she saw another Lu Bu armor standing behind her, identical in form, but completely different in color. At that moment, the Crimson Lu Bu mech transmitted Song Yongxiang's voice. "Mind picking up the pace? I've probably got 3 minutes tops." Asan was stunned by the appearance of a second Lu Bu armor, but with Song Yongxiang in the fight, the battlefield suddenly tilted in their favor. The couple from his past life moved in perfect sync, cutting through enemies together. In the midst of combat, she began to notice something. Every move he made was minimal. Precise strikes aimed directly at the enemy mech's core. He was only at yellow rank peak, yet his execution carried the calm efficiency of a veteran with decades of battlefield experience. Once he joined in, the enemy forces collapsed rapidly, leaving only a long-haired, balding lieutenant alive. The sight of two Lu Bu mechs clearly shattered the man's sanity. His expression twisted, eyes wild. He still charged forward in desperation. In an instant, Song Yongxiang synchronized fully with his mech. Gripping the sky-piercer halberd, Fangtian, two swift strikes severed both of the enemy's arms. The lieutenant was reduced to a human stump, utterly defeated. Song Yongxiang began interrogating him immediately. From the questioning, Asan finally confirmed that Milun operatives had orchestrated the ambush. Song Yongxiang sighed inwardly. She was still too inexperienced at this point. Just as the two exchanged playful jabs after the fight, the lieutenant suddenly snapped, igniting his soul power, attempting to self-destruct and drag them down with him. But Song Yongxiang matched the frequency of his soul power, suppressing the detonation through resonance, then followed with a single punch, blasting the mech skyward where it exploded mid-air into fragments. The guy was tougher than he looked. His head hit the ground hard enough to leave a crater. After disengaging his Star Soul construct, Song Yongxiang walked over calmly. Spotting the suicide poison hidden behind the man's second molar, he instantly recognized the signature. Nightshade's men. Nightshade, the general who commanded 330,000 remnants of Taihe, a sword saint from the island nation, and pilot of Star Soul General Ganjiang. In his previous life, while serving in the Black Armor Guard, Song Yongxiang had clashed with him repeatedly, each time ending in defeat due to his crippled soul veins. Even now, recalling those battles made the scar over his right eye, left by Nightshade, throb faintly. Asan demanded to know how he possessed such insider knowledge. Song Yongxiang gently took her hand again, assuring her he wasn't her enemy, and even recited the creed of universal love in non-attack. She still looked unconvinced. Then, out of nowhere, he pulled out her favorite candied strawberries. That only deepened her confusion. How could he possibly know she liked those? He had countless things he wanted to tell her, but not yet. Instead, he asked in a mock-serious tone, "Do you know the key to navigating the martial world?" Asan blinked in confusion. Song Yongxiang grinned shamelessly. "Money." The blunt answer left the inexperienced girl stunned. He continued enthusiastically. "With money, you can act righteously without worrying about reward. With money, you can accelerate your cultivation. With money, there are 100 ways to break through bottlenecks. From individuals to entire nations, resources and interests create conflicts and resolve them. There are no eternal enemies, only aligned interests. Offer enough incentive, and even former foes can become allies." Song Yongxiang's reasoning left, Asan completely stunned. Then a thunderous explosion cracked across the sky. The surrounding energy turned violently unstable. That unmistakable vibration. It was a rift forming. Had the beast tide begun earlier than in his previous life? Asan spoke quickly, her tone serious. According to Taiyuan intelligence, Milan discovered technology during their last secret realm expedition that can artificially trigger rifts. They intend to weaponize it. I came to Nanzhou to investigate this, but I walked straight into their trap. Meanwhile, the dying lieutenant sat on the ground, laughing madly as he congratulated his comrades on their success. The sight ignited Song Yongxiang's fury. He strode forward and hauled the man up by the collar, channeling soul power to torture him. Asan moved to stop him from killing the captive, but Song Yongxiang tossed the lieutenant aside instead. "I've already crippled his soul veins," he said calmly. "Take him back to Taiyuan for interrogation. I'm heading to Yuanding City to deal with the beast tide." He then ordered the system to forcibly summon the exclusive mount of Lu Bu's soul armor, the Scarlet Flame Dragon Steed. The sight left Asan speechless yet again. That was a Starfall beast only unlockable at Heaven rank. Yet a yellow rank peak cultivator had just summoned it. It immediately brought to mind the intelligence reports concerning Star Soul General Zuo Ci. Legend had it that Star Soul General Zuo Ci possessed the ability to shapeshift into other Star Soul Generals. Could the man before her be Zuo Ci's host? Asan called out, "Milon's objective this time might be connected to Zuo Ci. Watch yourself." Song Yongxiang left behind a brief, "Thanks," before riding off on his Starfall beast. He pushed the mount to its limits, racing back toward Yuanding City, determined to deal with the prematurely triggered beast tide. Inside Yuanding, devastation was everywhere. Alien Taoti had reduced entire streets to rubble. Instructor Guo from the Mecha Martial Academy knelt on the ground. Several soldiers from the Yuanding garrison stood in front of him, facing off against the Taoti that had struck him down. Other cadets supported their instructor, preparing to fall back. Earlier, they had rushed to the Western Encirclement as reinforcements, assisting the 5th Garrison Squad led by Zhou Tong. But students were still students. Casualties were inevitable. Several beasts were already pressing in from the front. Reports of enemy movement were coming from both flanks. The right side was especially dire. A dark mass of creatures closing in. Yet retreat was not an option. They were under orders to hold the encirclement and prevent the beast from spreading. Behind them stood countless unarmed civilians who depended on them for protection. After coordinating with Instructor Guo, Zhou Tong ordered the teachers to escort the students and civilians out immediately. He roared, "Tiandu will prevail," then led the remaining squad members straight into the swarm of beasts. Watching Captain Zhou locked in a bloody battle on the front line, one cadet asked anxiously, "Are we really supposed to retreat?" Instructor Guo replied firmly, "I've already requested reinforcements from command. They should arrive soon." Another student, seeing red from the combat, nearly charged forward to assist the garrison, but at that moment, the blonde member of the squad was smashed away by a beast's punch, only to be seized by another Taoti. In the next second, the creature opened its gaping maw and bit down hard on the mech. The blonde cadet screamed in agony. Zhou Tong's heart tightened. Fortunately, the academy squad rushed in and kicked the beast away in unison. To make matters worse, another bespectacled squad member was trapped by the Taoti. One devastating punch left him unable to resist. The academy squad was stretched beyond its limits. There was no one left to help. They could only watch helplessly as he was torn apart. Fear spread like wildfire. Voices trembled as they begged Instructor Guo to tell them when reinforcements would arrive. They didn't want to die so young. Suddenly, a beast lunged toward Instructor Guo. A brutal punch slammed both him and his mech into the ground. The female instructor who had remained silent until now was already shattered inside. As a mentor to her students, she found herself praying for a miracle, hoping some higher power would save them. The civilians behind them were no different. Fear etched across every face. Whispered prayers rose toward any god who might be listening. Captain Zhou of the garrison collapsed from sheer exhaustion, yet still tried to force himself back up as the Taoti's massive fist came crashing down toward Instructor Guo once more. A beam of light ripped straight through the beast, sending dust and debris exploding into the air. Everyone froze in disbelief. When the dust began to settle, they saw it clearly. A massive sky-piercer halberd, Fang Tian, had pierced the creature, and standing before it was the silhouette of a mounted warrior. It was Song Yongxiang, piloting Star Soul General Lu Bu. Among horses, red hair. Among men, Lu Bu. Even the tide of alien Taoti pouring in like a flood could not compare to Lu Bu's overwhelming power. Mounted atop the Scarlet Flame Dragon steed, Lu Bu advanced with the force of 1,000 cavalry, cutting down the alien beasts without mercy. In just a handful of exchanges, civilians and soldiers alike were left utterly stunned. Was this the reinforcement the instructor had mentioned? After eliminating the beasts, Song Yongxiang returned to their side, disengaging Lu Bu's Star Soul construct. He walked straight to the body of a fallen soldier, replanted the banner of the Tiandu garrison into the ground, and raised his fist, shouting, "Tiandu will prevail." The sight ignited the crowd's spirit instantly. The garrison squad and academy team roared the same cry in unison. But when Instructor Guo noticed the academy uniform Song Yongxiang was wearing, she froze. How could the academy possibly harbor someone this powerful? After accepting the crowd's cheers, Song Yongxiang spotted an unconscious female student nearby. Fortunately, fate hadn't abandoned her. She had crossed paths with him. As a reward for saving her life, he casually removed the soul talisman from her Wei Yuan-type mech, then fed her a revitalization pill. Carrying the injured girl, he regrouped with the garrison squad, facing their savior. Captain Zhou Tong of the 5th Squad stepped forward with a respectful salute. "Senior, thank you for saving our lives." The bespectacled member whose mech had been dismantled earlier whispered, "He looks like an academy student. Is it appropriate to call him senior?" Zhou Tong shot him a stern look. In learning, there's no order of age. The capable command respect. Meanwhile, Song Yongxiang handed the injured girl over to Instructor Guo Yuan. Once she took the student, he turned to leave. Unable to hold back, Instructor Guo called out, "Are you a student of the Mecha Martial Academy?" Without looking back, Song Yongxiang flicked something over his shoulder, leaving only his name behind, then summoned Lu Bu's Star Soul Beast once more and rode off. Instructor Guo had already discerned his cultivation, yellow rank peak. But how could someone at that level be this strong? She lowered her gaze to what he had thrown. Captain Zhou's expression shifted the moment he saw the pills inside the bottle. These are Tier 3 soul replenishing pills. 50,000 Tiandu credits each. This tiny bottle equals my entire year's salary. That made Guo Yuan sigh in awe. Just how strong is this student Song? Meanwhile, the injured girl in her arms quietly engraved the name of her savior into her heart. At that very moment, Song Yongxiang was still sweeping through the streets of Yuanding City, hunting alien Taoti. His movements caught the attention of a bald elder. The old man narrowed eyes, even narrower than Brock's from Pokemon, and chuckled. "Interesting little fellow." Inside the War Command Center, President Gu was monitoring live feeds from across the perimeter. 34 minutes had passed since the battle began. Multiple squads holding the line had already suffered casualties exceeding half their numbers and urgently required reinforcements. She immediately inquired about the Mecha Martial Academy's situation. Secretary Xiaoyu reported, according to defensive units from other sectors, slowing arrays appear to have been deployed within the academy grounds specifically against the beasts. The fighting is intense, but there have been no casualties so far. Additionally, Guo Yuan's squad at the 3 o'clock position reports receiving support from a mysterious Star Soul general. The beasts at the 3 o'clock sector have been completely cleared. President Gu frowned slightly at the report. Just then, squads at the 4 and 5 o'clock sectors transmitted new updates. They had spotted a mounted, mysterious Star Soul general sweeping through the battlefield. The footage streamed directly into the command center. President Gu's eyes locked onto the weapon in the video. Sky Piercer Halberd? Fang Tian? Could it be Star Soul General Lu Bu? Secretary Xiaoyu added, based on his movement trajectory, his destination appears to be the Mecha Martial Academy. President Gu fell into deep thought. Star Soul General Lu Bu appearing at this precise moment, heading toward the academy. Was he an ally or an enemy? At that moment, Song Yongxiang, piloting Lu Bu, had reached the perimeter of the Mecha Martial Academy. Seeing the defensive line still holding, he silently thanked his earlier decision to install slowing arrays inside the academy combined with instructor Opei's 12-position tiger wing formation. That synergy had prevented casualties so far. Since they could still hold a little longer, he decided to seize the opportunity to extract Star Soul General Zuo Ci's soul jade. He quickly arrived at Zuo Ci's statue. After stepping out of the star coffin, he ordered the Star Lord system to begin scanning the statue. Once the location of Zuo Ci's soul jade was locked, Song Yongxiang initiated a forced extraction. The statue's head cracked apart, and the soul jade was successfully pulled free. At that exact moment, Lu Yan, standing beneath the statue, noticed Song Yongxiang extracting it. Song Yongxiang recognized the newly transferred student immediately. Had there been a deeper connection in their previous life? According to his memories, Lu Yan had transferred in on the very day the beast tide erupted. By sheer coincidence, they had even run into each other outside the girls' locker room. The outcome had been a chaotic chase. Later, under President Gu's arrangement, Lu Yan became his classmate. But on the night the beast tide broke out, Lu Yan vanished without a trace. The next time they met, Lu Yan had become Test Subject 0 of Milan Nation's artificial host program, appearing on the battlefield during the invasion of Tiandu. Eventually, he was rescued by another faction, joined their ranks, and ultimately died as a human hero. Song Yongxiang never expected to encounter him again in this reborn timeline. Yet Lu Yan casually called him 3-Minute Man, just like the other students. Irritated, Song Yongxiang blinked behind him in an instant and knocked him unconscious with a single palm strike. Based on his earlier deduction, if Milan Nation had truly stolen Zuo Ci's soul jade, then Lu Yan must have been taken alongside it. The mass-produced Star Soul General Wu Jiao that later appeared in Milun did bear a resemblance to Zuo Ci's statue, but now the soul jade was in Song Yongxiang's possession, and Lu Yan had been knocked unconscious. In this timeline, there would likely be no Test Subject 0. He might lose his destined rise as a hero, but he would also be spared the torment of forced enhancement experiments. This life, let him simply remain an ordinary student. After storing Zuo Ci's soul jade in the system space, Song Yongxiang decided it was time to rescue his classmates and teachers still locked in battle. Though, would showing up in Lubu be a little too flashy? Cut to a Taoti preparing to rip apart the Wei Yuan mech, piloted by class monitor He Yan. Fortunately, its claws were slowed again by the slowing arrays Song Yongxiang had set earlier, giving He Yan just enough time to react and block the attack. Without that delay, she wouldn't have lasted this long. Still, the gap in strength was overwhelming. One more strike, and she might not survive it. At the critical moment, several blasts of soul force struck the beast from behind. Irritated as if merely scratched, the Taoti spun around, only to see Song Yongxiang making his entrance in a student model Wei Yuan mech. He had decided that rescuing classmates in Lubu might be over the top, so he switched back to the Wei Yuan before arriving. After saving the class monitor from being devoured, he successfully drew the beast's full attention. Enraged, the Taoti lunged straight at him. But this was Song Yongxiang reborn after 60 years of battlefield experience. No alien beast would land a clean hit that easily. While dodging, he slashed backward, carving a deep wound into the monster's hide, then pivoted, opening 2 punctures across its throat. By the time the Taoti swiped in retaliation, it grasped nothing but a fading afterimage. Under Song Yongxiang's relentless, storm-like assault, the alien Taoti was battered into disarray. Then he charged power into his legs and leapt, cutting a clean arc through the air, and punched a hole straight through the monster's skull. But a single-handed sword had its limits. Even after multiple strikes, the fight wasn't finished. A sly grin tugged at his lips as he asked the Star-Lord system, "Can you construct Lubu's Sky Piercer halberd, Feng Tian, separately?" The moment the Sky Piercer halberd, Feng Tian, materialized in his grasp, his presence surged. Class monitor. Yan stared, stunned by the sheer size of the weapon. Having endured what felt like endless scratching, the Taoti roared and lunged again. Song Yongxiang met it head-on, halberd raised. With the new weapon equipped, it took only a single exchange. The savage alien Taoti was cleaved cleanly in half. That instant kill left He Yan completely captivated. She didn't even react when he stepped closer and called out, "Class monitor." She looked almost smitten, standing there dazed. Before she could even ask his name, he had already vaulted away. Only then did she blink back to awareness. That voice? Why does it sound familiar? And he called me class monitor? The scene shifted to the Academy Dormitory District. Shangguan Yinqian was providing support behind a turtle shell defensive formation formed by instructors and students. Yet in the next moment, she charged out to confront the Taoti herself. She had reason for confidence. Even piloting a training model Wei Yuan mech, she tore through the swarm multiple times with lethal grace. Her classmates often said that once she entered combat, she slipped into a near maniacal state. No one could pull her back. But no matter how strong she was still just a third-year student. After barely dodging one beast's attack, she was struck from behind by another. The blow left her severely injured. Her recklessness trapped her inside the Taoti encirclement. cut off from reinforcements. The next second, one of the beasts opened its gaping maw, ready to tear her apart. At the last possible moment, a Wei Yuan-type mech wielding a sky-piercer halberd, Fangtian dropped from above, hovering over her. The instant it landed, a crescent moon strike swept outward, erasing every towery surrounding her. Watching this boss-level figure mowing through enemies like weeds in a Musou game, the battle-crazed girl's heart went haywire, her face flushing red like a ripe tomato. She couldn't stand the thought of lying there in such a humiliating state before him, forcing herself upright. Then Song Yongxiang stepped forward to help her up, and that simple gesture sent her pulse racing even harder. She couldn't see his face through the mech, yet even her voice softened without her noticing. Her classmates stared in disbelief. The notoriously fierce senior was suddenly acting so smitten in front of this powerhouse. Thankfully, the instructor kept a clear head and quickly directed the halberd-wielding ace to reinforce the main line. In the next heartbeat, Song Yongxiang charged back into the enemy ranks, striking left and right in rapid succession. The Taudi encirclement shattered like wet paper. Witnessing this turnaround, the instructor immediately ordered the students into a 10-unit anti-beast formation, Eagle Strike formation, shifting from defense to offense. Everyone surged forward behind Song Yongxiang, except for one student who remained frozen in place. After glancing around, he realized he was the clown all along. The instructor hadn't assigned him to the formation at all. The injured Shangguan Yingqian walked up behind him, still speaking in that uncharacteristically gentle tone, telling him to remain in the rear and provide support. Ironically, that softness only left him even more flustered. Meanwhile, inside the command center, the instructors were left completely stunned after seeing the truth. On the screen, Song Yongxiang piloted a Wei Yuan-type mech, wielding the sky-piercer halberd. On the battlefield, he looked like a war god descended upon the mortal realm. Alien Taoti that normally required 5 fighters to bring down were being cut apart by him like vegetables on a chopping board. One strike, one kill. With only seconds of soul power remaining, he hurled the sky-piercer halberd like a spear toward the final Taoti, then leapt after it himself, delivering the finishing blow mid-air. At that moment, a system notification echoed. Soul power remaining, 0%. Construct disengaging. As the mech construct dissolved, Song Yongxiang's true body was revealed before everyone. The students he had just saved were utterly shocked. The one who had rescued them was the very same Song Yongxiang they used to mock as the 3-minute man. The truth left them burning with embarrassment. In the command center, President Gu and her secretary were equally stunned. They could hardly believe what they were seeing. In that single battle, Song Yongxiang had personally slain 23 beasts and assisted in another 9 kills. Even the academy instructors couldn't match that level of combat power. If the one wielding the sky-piercer halberd was him, then was the Star Soul General Lu Bu, who had been sweeping the battlefield earlier, also under his control? That thought reminded President Gu of the data on Star Soul General Zuosi. Legend had it that Zuosi's mech could freely alter its appearance to deceive the world. Had Song Yongxiang already become Zuosi's host? Was this the true reason the Song family had pulled strings to force him into the academy? Filled with suspicion, President Gu immediately decided that once the beast tide ended, Song Yongxiang would be detained and interrogated. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, the same Song Yongxiang who had been mocked as the 3-minute man had single-handedly driven back every beast. Now, with his soul power depleted, he sat cross-legged on the spot, regulating his breath. Not a single classmate behind him dared approach. As he adjusted a recovery array with one hand, a third-year instructor finally asked for his name in class. He turned calmly and replied, Song Yongxiang, first year, class 10. The third-year students were stunned. A first year this strong? And the same 3-minute man we used to joke about? That's impossible. But Shangguan Yingqian, the senior he had just saved, stepped forward to thank him. The moment he heard her name, Song Yongxiang froze. No way. It can't be that much of a coincidence. In the future, she would become the host of Star Soul General Long Qi. The Shangguan family, one of Tiandu's 4 great families, would defect during the war with Milun 5 years later. This crazy woman had once been his enemy, pushing him into life-or-death situations multiple times. If not for sheer luck back then, he would have died by her hand. So without hesitation, Song Yongxiang grabbed her wrist, intending to copy the future Star Soul General Long Qi from her. The students behind them were dumbfounded. He actually dared to grab the fierce senior's hand like that? No one saw that coming. Even Shangguan Yingqian felt her cheeks heat up. Her thoughts spiraled wildly. Is he holding my hand to confess? But father said the Shangguan family only accepts sons-in-law who marry in. Would Junior Song even agree? At this rate, she was practically planning their future gravesite. Meanwhile, Song Yongxiang was focused solely on getting the Star-Lord system to copy Long Qi, eliminating a future threat in advance. But the system issued a failure notification. 2 possible reasons were given. First, the previous host of Long Qi had not yet died. Second, Long Qi had not yet manifested and currently had no host. Only then did Song Yongxiang recall that the Shangguan family would obtain the Long Qi Soul Jade during a secret realm expedition 10 months later. Looks like he would have to wait. Snapping back to reality, he realized he had been holding her hand for quite a while. The next second, he awkwardly let go of her hand and even asked if he'd hurt her. He looked completely unfazed, but Shangguan Yinqian wasn't. In those few eternal seconds, she had already picked names for their future children. Song Yongxiang quickly explained, "I've long admired Senior's reputation. I got a little carried away. I meant nothing else." The excuse was so flimsy that not even the onlooking classmates believed it. He then pulled out a bottle of soul-replenishing pills, popped one into his own mouth to restore his soul power, and generously asked her to hold out her hand so he could give her one. Having basically conquered herself in her own imagination, the senior extended her hand like she was waiting for a wedding ring. She even whispered softly, "Junior Song, be gentle. Don't hurt me." For a moment, Song Yongxiang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He simply asked her to turn her hand over properly. The moment she received the pill, Shangguan Yinqian recognized it. A soul-replenishing pill. The instructor beside them nearly lost his composure. "Damn, that's really a soul-replenishing pill. One of those is almost 10 months of my salary," Song Yongxiang said calmly. "It's for restoring your soul power. We'll still need your combat strength. Recover quickly." She obediently swallowed it at once. Instantly, a vast surge of soul power flooded her body. It felt as if billions of stars had been poured into her veins. An overwhelming rush. The quality far surpassed anything she'd ever taken before. This was definitely top grade. Seeing how incredible it was, the instructor couldn't help but hint that he could use one too, but Song Yongxiang refused, saying he didn't have many left. That said, he had prepared something else for everyone. With a wave of his right hand, a massive recovery array spread out, enveloping them all. Everyone inside immediately felt their soul power recovery speed increase fivefold. While they were still marveling at his generosity, Song Yongxiang announced he was heading to the training arena to reinforce the fight, and told them to rest here for now. The moment he left, Shangguan Yinqian pulled out her soul talisman, ready to follow. In the blink of an eye, only the instructor and the other students were left behind, fuming helplessly. At the central training arena of the Mecha Martial Academy, Instructor Ope was directing Instructor Chung Yi to rotate in and support students running low on soul power. Together, they led the team to surround and eliminate an isolated beast. With multiple students launching feint attacks, the creature's attention was successfully divided. Seizing the opening, Instructor Ope unleashed a fully charged strike and executed it on the spot. Even though exhaustion was written all over her face, she still ordered the formation to expand, preparing for the next assault. Suddenly, several blinding streaks of light appeared in the sky, racing toward them at terrifying speed. Instructor Ope immediately ordered everyone to scatter and evade the incoming bombardment. But it was a moment too late. Dense explosions erupted as the entire squad was swallowed by the beast's soul cannons. When the smoke finally began to clear, Instructor Ope realized the beast had adapted. They knew close combat meant being weakened by the mysterious array, so they retreated to long range, preparing sustained artillery fire instead. Sure enough, one student shouted in alarm. The Tao Ti were charging up again for another volley. Instructor Ope once again commanded the remaining members to disperse and warned them that Wei Yuan-type shields could not withstand that level of bombardment. The instant she finished speaking, another streak of light shot into the sky behind them. A powerful strike descended and instantly killed one of the beasts mid-charge. As the light faded, the figure revealed himself. Song Yongxiang had arrived from the other side of the battlefield. He stood alone, gripping the Sky-Piercer halberd, weaving through the beast's interlocking barrage like a phantom. Charging into enemy lines solo, he once again became Tiandu's war god, harvesting beast lives one after another. Instructor Ope quickly analyzed his technique. He was releasing controlled bursts of soul power beneath his feet, maintaining propulsion while executing delicate footwork, gliding in a semi-hovering state. The control required for that maneuver was extraordinary. What was even more shocking, he piloted a training model Wei Yuan-type mech, yet wielded a massive halberd-class weapon. No one had ever seen such a combination before. At this moment, Instructor Ope had only one question in mind. Who exactly was this powerhouse? The squad members behind her were thinking the same thing. We're all piloting training model units. How is this guy making it look like an S-tier machine? Meanwhile, Song Yongxiang continued weaving across the battlefield. Facing the interlocking firepower of alien beasts, he moved like a seasoned general, effortless, composed. But then, Ope froze. That footwork? It was the Black Armor Guard's closely guarded technique, 7 steps upon the stars, and the next second shocked her even more. Song Yongxiang launched into the air and unleashed Moonfall Slash. That was a signature move of the martial saint among the 8 generals of Tiandu, and he was executing it in a mere training model mech? How strong was he really? Beside her, Instructor Cheng Yi was already contemplating asking to become his disciple, but reality had a sense of humor. The same Shangguan Yingqian who had turned into Song Yongxiang's #1 fangirl earlier now rushed onto the scene, running while shouting, "Song Yongxiang, wait for me!" The two instructors instantly began questioning their life choices. Was this powerhouse just someone who happened to share a name with that so-called useless student? At that moment, Song Yongxiang cut down the final beast with a single strike. The system once again announced that his soul power had been depleted. Instructor Ope stormed toward him, ready to demand the truth about his identity. But just then, his mech construct was forcibly disengaged. A very familiar figure appeared before them. Both instructors recognized him instantly. It was Song Yongxiang, the student who had been missing for 3 days. Now standing there with an almost provocatively arrogant air, the man who had just saved their lives hadn't even heard a single word of thanks. Instead, he was immediately interrogated, ordered to explain how he had become so powerful, so much for saving anyone. Treated like a criminal instead of a hero. Instructor Ope, perhaps shaken by the fact that he had saved her, kept pressing him about why he had concealed his strength since enrollment. She was grateful, yes, but she needed to know whether he was friend or foe. Just as Song Yongxiang was thinking about how to answer, President Gu's personal mech descended before them. The two instructors immediately disengaged their constructs and saluted, but President Gu ignored them completely and walked straight towards Song Yongxiang. She began by thanking Song Yongxiang on behalf of the entire academy, but what truly concerned her was why he had concealed his strength, and she demanded a reasonable explanation. In his previous life, Song Yongxiang hadn't hidden the Star-Lord system from those close to him. But President Gu came from the Gu family of Tiandu, and he still couldn't determine whether she was friend or foe. For now, revealing that secret would be unwise. Yet President Gu seemed to read his thoughts instantly. In the blink of an eye, she deployed a barrier array, sealing off the surroundings so no one else could overhear. Clearly, she wasn't going to let this go without answers. She spoke first. Does your hidden strength have something to do with Star Soul General Zuo Si? From my deduction, you pretended your soul veins were damaged, used your family's connections to enter the academy through the back door, and your real goal was the Zuo Si Soul Jade, wasn't it? To be fair, her reasoning wasn't far off. The Zuo Si Soul Jade was indeed in Song Yongxiang's possession. The next second, President Gu said bluntly, "Song Yongxiang, drop the act. You've already become the host of Zuo Si, haven't you?" The Lu Bu that appeared in the West District was just Zuo Si's unique transformation ability. Song Yongxiang was completely stunned. What kind of logic is that? Zuo Si can do that? I never even copied him in my previous life. How would I know? She continued calmly. According to Tiandu's historical records, Zuo Si can not only assume the appearance of other Star Soul generals, but also replicate certain abilities and techniques. He can even conceal a Star Soul Master's true cultivation level. Otherwise, no one could possibly break through 3 minor realms in just a few days. The cultivation you're displaying now is merely an illusion, one of the clearest proofs that you are Zuo Si's host. After hearing that wildly elaborate theory, Song Yongxiang almost started believing it himself. But after a brief pause, he thought, if that's how she sees it, then fine. I'll let Zuo Si take the fall for the Star-Lord system. The moment he played along, President Gu's imagination escalated even further. She continued in an almost leisurely tone. So your family patriarch must have long realized that you have a compatibility with the Zuo Si Soul Jade. That's why he arranged for you to enroll in the Mecha Martial Academy and wait for the opportunity to seize it, correct? If today's beast invasion hadn't forced you to expose your strength, you might have graduated 3 years from now without anyone ever discovering that Zuo Si had already fallen into your hands. At that point, the Song family could rely on Zuo Si's power to rise again. Song Yongxiang was rendered speechless. Wow, thank you for writing my cover story for me. But she wasn't done. President Gu brought up Tiandu's Star Soul General Administration regulations, stating that every inheritance must be registered with the new Celestial Bureau. If the Song family had acted privately, it would constitute a violation, and in severe cases, even treason. Hearing that, Song Yongxiang truly didn't know how to respond. Just when he thought he was about to be detained on the spot, President Gu instead proposed a deal. According to President Gu, the beast invasion was most likely triggered intentionally. She had already identified 3 suspected core activation points. The East District was being handled by a heaven-ranked powerhouse. She herself would lead the operation in the South District alongside the City Guard. As for the North District, that mission was assigned to Song Yongxiang. His task wasn't to suppress the core entirely, but to enter the Rift Center and rescue someone. If she's sending me, that person's identity can't be ordinary, he thought. And just as expected, she revealed the target, Tiandu's second prince, Tian Zehai. In his previous life, the second prince had been a staunch warhawk, repeatedly advocating preemptive strikes against the Milan nation. Back then, he supposedly died during this beast invasion, Yet the official report claimed he was assassinated by a Taiyuan assassin, causing Asan to be falsely hunted by Tiandu. But Song Yongxiang knew the truth. Asan had never touched him. Could the Milan nation have been the real culprit? President Gu then made her offer clear. If Song Yongxiang successfully rescued the second prince, the academy would file the necessary registration with the new Celestial Bureau, granting him legal possession of Zuosi. To keep his secrets buried in this life, he reluctantly agreed. Still, would he run into Asan again in the North District? There was no time to dwell on it. He had a deal to fulfill. When Song Yongxiang activated the Lubu mech, Shangguan Yingqian immediately insisted on going with him. In his previous life, her family had supported the second prince's militant stance. Before he could copy her long key, he needed to make sure she survived. Better that than letting her die by accident while following the president's team. But seeing how infatuated she was now, would she still grow into the formidable opponent he once faced? They say men and women working together makes things easier. Then why did Song Yongxiang feel like he was carrying the entire world on his back? Song Yongxiang knew he wasn't weak, but with that crazy woman constantly pulling aggro behind him, she was basically trying to run him into the ground. He had no choice but to suppress his irritation and stop her. Until he copied her Star Soul General, turning against her wasn't an option. Fortunately, ever since he saved her, she obeyed him almost without question. In theory, even if he ignored her, she could defend herself back at the Mecha Martial Academy. But now that his rebirth had begun altering history, keeping her close was safer. Still, an enemy far stronger than him might appear soon. He needed to teach her how to coordinate properly. Yet the moment she heard he needed help, she revealed a strangely suggestive expression and said shyly, "Junior Song, whatever you want me to help with, or whatever you want to do to me, I'm fine with it." Song Yongxiang felt his soul leave his body. Can't I get a competent teammate for once? Meanwhile, the situation on the second prince's side was deteriorating. Liu Xinwu, commander of the royal guards, had rushed into a trap to rescue others and was now gravely wounded. Tian Zehai was filled with guilt. He had originally received intelligence that agents from the Milan nation had infiltrated Tiandu. His plan was to lure them deeper, gather evidence, and then persuade his father to declare war. Instead, they had become the bait, trapped by Milan operatives. The young prince anxiously demanded to know when reinforcements would arrive. The only response he received was, "They're on the way." Left with no alternatives, he ordered the maid to bring out the final revitalization pill. She refused. That pill was reserved for the prince's own emergency use. Even the severely wounded Commander Liu urged them not to waste it on him. But the second prince, loyal and stubborn, snatched the pill. Ignoring their protests, he prepared to feed it to Liu. Suddenly, a guard shouted, "Another beast ahead." The soldiers immediately formed ranks, ready to die, protecting the prince. As the Qingqi-type beast advanced, another guard reported beasts approaching from the opposite side. Was the second prince truly doomed today? Meanwhile, at the rift in the East District, several defensive squads watched from elevated ground as a man confronted a beast alone. Facing the Qingqi-type creature, the bald middle-aged man stood calmly. He hadn't even begun assembling his mech. A rookie soldier asked their captain, "Why aren't we assisting Elder Zhu?" The captain replied gravely, "Elder Zhu can tear beasts apart with his bare hands. At that level of combat, we'd better stay back, unless we want to get caught in the aftermath." Meanwhile, at the core of the South District Rift, President Gu had indeed taken personal command. From the scale of forces assembled, one might think she was preparing for war against another nation. Even though a powerful Qingqi-type beast had emerged from the rift, under that level of firepower, it would likely be riddled with arrows before long. Compared to the other two rift cores, the North District's combat strength was clearly the weakest. Only a handful of royal guards stood there, facing beasts emerging from both flanks. Seeing the dire situation, one guard urged the maid Xiaomei to escort the prince away while they held the line. Even the heavily wounded Commander Liu insisted they retreat, claiming he could still buy the prince 20 breaths of time. But the second prince told them not to panic. The aura approaching from behind didn't feel like a beast. Sure enough, from within the mist, a weapon tore through the air. It slammed into the ground before the Qingqi-type creature. As the beast hesitated, Song Yongxiang stepped out of the fog of war. To the guards, it was like salvation had arrived. The reinforcements were none other than Song Yongxiang, wielding a Star Soul General. Seizing the brief opening, he ordered Shangguan Yingqian to extract the rift crystal from the beast's body. He would need it soon. Before the words had even settled, he drew the beast's aggro again. Facing an enemy 3 major realms above him, he had no choice but to bend the rules. Using the Soul Prison Array, he temporarily restrained the creature. The second prince quickly realized that the newcomer was stalling for time with array techniques. Yet even as a prince, he had never seen someone integrate an array into a weapon and launch it like that. Meanwhile, the maid closely observed Shangguan Yinqian's actions. On the display, she pulled a purple crystal from the beast's corpse. The second prince immediately recognized it, a priceless rift crystal. Also known as a spatial stone, it was said to grow within the stomach pouch of Taudi-type beasts, granting them space compression abilities that allowed them to swallow objects many times their size. As a primary material for storage talismans and mech soul talismans, it was classified as a strictly controlled strategic resource rarely seen on the market. Yet the maid assumed that Song Yongxiang was merely stalling to line his own pockets. What she couldn't possibly imagine was that the crystal had another, far deadlier use. The soul prison array drained his soul power at a terrifying rate. Song Yongxiang had no choice but to keep swallowing soul-replenishing pills to sustain it. Fortunately, Shangguan Yinqian had secured 3 spatial stones. Not many, but enough. In the next instant, he seized the stones with soul power and hurled them toward the Kyongchi-type beast. He locked eyes briefly with the second prince below. Then he leapt from the scarlet flame dragon steed. His sky-piercer halberd returned to his grasp mid-air. At the same time, the array dissipated. The beast immediately fired a beam of soul energy at him. He twisted aside effortlessly. The creature's left arm morphed into a scythe, slashing toward him in the air. Song Yongxiang met it head-on with his halberd. Their clash illuminated the entire night sky in those fleeting seconds of close combat. He maneuvered the spatial stones into position beside the beast. A moment later, brute force sent him flying. He crashed through multiple buildings in succession, before barely regaining balance. At yellow rank peak, even wielding Lu Bu, he couldn't overpower a Chongqi beast comparable to a heaven rank powerhouse. But he was no reckless rookie anymore. With a thunderous shout, the spatial stones he had hidden beside the beast detonated violently. The explosion obliterated half of its body. Enraged and frightened, the beast summoned lesser creatures to swarm him. They stood no chance. Within moments, he cut them down, as the beast fired another soul beam. Immobilized during the attack, Song Yongxiang closed in and struck at point-blank range, and his sky-piercer halberd shattered from the impact. A cold sweat ran down Song Yongxiang's back. At his current level, his body simply couldn't match the Kongqi's brute strength, but he didn't need to overpower it. He only needed a wound large enough to fit a spatial stone. The second explosion tore away another half of its body. Enraged, the Chongqi charged like a maddened beast. As it opened its jaws to swallow him whole, Song Yongxiang prepared his final move. He thrust his right hand, along with a spatial stone, straight into its mouth. Then he detonated the stone with soul power from within its jaws. A blinding violet flash erupted. The entire beast was annihilated, leaving nothing behind. Unfortunately, the Kyongchi crystal inside it was destroyed as well. Otherwise, he could have made another fortune. No sooner had the battle ended than the royal guards formed ranks to receive him. Typical royal theatrics, the second prince formally thanked him for his assistance. Song Yongxiang responded with polite concern for their condition. But the moment he addressed the prince directly, the guards stiffened, clearly anxious about his identity being exposed. He quickly clarified that President Gu had sent him, diffusing the tension. In conversation, the second prince learned that he was Song Yongxiang, a student at Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy. That immediately reminded him of rumors about the Song family using connections to enroll a disciple with crippled soul veins. It had to be him. Having witnessed the entire cross-realm kill, the prince was already calculating how to recruit him. Song Yongxiang saw through it, but had greater priorities in this life, so he brushed it aside. At that moment, Commander Liu's condition worsened, his coughing growing severe. The Academy's medical team wouldn't arrive for at least another 45 minutes. Considering future alliances, Song Yongxiang chose to save him and secure a favor. Drawing upon medical knowledge from his previous life, he quickly diagnosed shattered soul veins. Without soul circulation, self-healing was impossible. With no advanced treatment available, the only option was to administer a revitalization pill to preserve his life. The second prince pointed out that he had already given Commander Liu one revitalization pill. Taking another probably wouldn't change much. Song Yongxiang corrected him calmly. He had said a little, not one. If one pill didn't work, then give him a bottle. He left another bottle with the maid, instructing her to administer it in intervals. That should keep Liu alive until the medical team arrived. The second prince had probably never seen such outrageously lavish medical treatment in his life. Meanwhile, in the Eastern District, Elder Su stood calmly before the beast. Among Nanzhou's Star Soul Masters, he was one of those closest to Saint Rank. Though only half a step into Saint Rank, a mere Heaven Rank beast was nothing to him. Even piloting an outdated mass-production mech, he could slay it alone. He raised his short blade and began charging. Soul power condensed into a sword aura, dozens of meters long. With a casual downward slash, the aura stretched for miles. This was the third form of 10,000-mile sword, One slash to shatter mountains and rivers. The heaven-rank beast vanished within the raging vortex of soul power. As the Yuanding city guards marveled at the instant kill, someone realized Elder Su had disappeared. On a nearby rooftop, a group of Milan operatives prepared to retreat. Their plan had failed, only to be intercepted by Elder Zu. One of them immediately recognized him as the man who had just slain the beast. Their captain began assembling his mech to resist, but a slipper flew through the air, smacking him straight into the wall. The rest were stunned and swiftly dispatched by Elder Su, barefoot. After finishing the last one, he grabbed the captain like a chicken, leaping across rooftops with him in tow. In the southern district, the beasts were overwhelmed and beaten to death under President Gu's command. No matter how skilled you are, numbers always matter. While others celebrated victory, President Gu noticed Elder Su's sudden appearance. He handed over the captured operative. Suspecting infiltration within the Intelligence Bureau and City Guard, he insisted she handle it personally. Then he turned toward the North District. Something interesting had caught his attention there. The question was it the second prince or the mysterious Song Yongxiang? Meanwhile, the second prince was still examining the soul-replenishing pill Song Yongxiang had provided. It was nothing like the ones he'd taken before. Its quality was extraordinary. Peak grade, perhaps even approaching Saint grade. Yet the alchemical patterns revealed a refining method he had never seen. This technique might surpass Tiandu's current standards by decades. And if the effect were even slightly stronger, he didn't get to finish that thought. Commander Liu's wounds began visibly healing before their eyes. Upon waking, Liu described a dream. He felt immersed in a warm current of renewal, like a seed bathed in a sea of light, reborn. His battle injuries vanished. Even his chronic back pain from years of cultivation disappeared. Mei Xiaomei noticed the wrinkles and gray hair fading from his face. A man who once looked 40 now appeared barely in his 30s. Was this all because of Song Yongxiang's pill? The second prince had admired his combat strength. Now he realized there might be an alchemy grandmaster behind him. This was someone he had to win over. Just as he was scheming, Shangguan Yinqian returned carrying a pile of spatial stones, instantly making his Saint-grade pill seem insignificant. 9 intact rift crystals. He immediately took interest. At first, he declared them strategic resources not to be casually traded, then promptly offered to purchase them all. Song Yongxiang had intended to offer a slight discount to secure long-term cooperation. Unfortunately, Shangguan Yinqian belonged to the prince's faction. Her second brother served directly under him. What Song Yongxiang thought would fetch 6 units was pushed down to 5. The prince sweetened the deal by promising Shangguan Yinqian's brother 3 rapid promotions. Seeing her delighted expression, Song Yongxiang couldn't refuse. Then the prince played the limited budget card, asking for a favor. With the two working in tandem, Song Yongxiang relented, yet the maid clutched the storage card stubbornly. She even suggested letting Shangguan Yinqian harvest the crystals herself, since they were family. Commander Liu, however, sensed something deeper. Intact rift crystals required a specific killing method. Securing so many at once meant Song Yongxiang possessed that technique. Only then did the maid reluctantly release the funds. As the transaction concluded, the second prince reflected on the Song family's history. Once one of Tiandu's 4 great families, their previous patriarch had been one of the 8 generals. 20 years ago, they produced a genius who dominated an era, only to fall due to a scandal involving a woman, leading to their exile to the southern frontier wall. But with Song Yongxiang rising now, perhaps the Song family would reclaim its former glory. Money exchanged hands, so did the goods. The second prince was about to order his guards to transport the rift crystals. As a top-tier merchant, Song Yongxiang immediately decided to throw in free shipping. Everyone knew rift crystals couldn't be stored in storage talismans due to their spatial properties. What they didn't expect was that Song Yongxiang could use a cutting-edge spatial array to compress the crystals first, then store them safely inside. Making customers haul off goods worth that much wasn't his style. Granted, the move was also a little flashy on purpose. As he and Shangguan Yinqian prepared to leave, the second prince solemnly declared that he now owed Song Yongxiang a favor. If he ever needed anything, just ask. Song Yongxiang returned the courtesy with a polite smile, thinking to himself, that favor will come in handy soon, and I won't waste it. After parting ways, he reflected. The beast-tide incident seemed over. He hadn't sensed Asan's presence near the prince, meaning she had likely escaped Yuanding City successfully. With this resolved, it was time to head home. In his previous life, both the Mecha Martial Academy and Yuanding City were destroyed in this beast-tide. He had fled south with the refugees, detouring through the desert of Death. It took over 20 days to return to the Song family. Yet less than a month later, the southern frontier line they guarded was swallowed by an even larger beast tide. The Song soldiers and the Yong'an city defenders were nearly annihilated. The old patriarch, his siblings, all died there, and he, powerless, could only escape. alone once again. During his escape in the previous life, he had encountered the Black Armor Guard reinforcements and had been saved by that female master. Now, there were still 2 full months before that disaster unfolded. There was still time to change everything. His thoughts snapped apart when he sensed a powerful aura closing in. Without hesitation, he lashed out with a kick. Through the settling dust emerged a bald man in slippers. Song Yongxiang's sudden strike made the second prince tense instantly. That presence was far beyond heaven rank. Commander Liu muttered under his breath. This man was likely infinitely close to Saint rank. From within the smoke, Elder Su spoke coldly, killing intent thick in his voice. You hide yourself well, boy. A mere yellow rank peak. Yet you sensed me. Song Yongxiang replied calmly. A Grandmaster of the Heavenly Realm working as a gatekeeper at the Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy? I'd say we're even. One of the Academy's 7 legends, rotating presidents, but an unmovable gatekeeper. That would be you, Elder Su. He cupped his fists respectfully. Junior Song Yongxiang greets Elder Su. Elder Shu, Shu Himing, the foremost of Nanzhou's 3 swords, known as the 10,000-mile sword. He reached heaven rank at 30 and rose to fame with his signature strike, one slash to shatter mountains and rivers. He once crossed thousands of miles alone to reinforce the northern front, slicing 3 aerial warships from the sky and destroying hundreds of enemy mechs, turning the tide of battle. Rumor had it he achieved heaven rank great perfection over 20 years ago, yet bound by the ancient saying, none but the chosen may ascend to saint. He had spent decades walking the mortal world, tempering his heart, seeking to break that ceiling, not for himself alone, but to carve a path to saint rank for all. Ordinary star soul masters, lacking innate destiny. That was the strange part. If Elder Su truly was President Gu's hidden trump card, then without Song Yongxiang's intervention, she should have sent him immediately to rescue the second prince. A half-saint was invincible beneath saint rank. So why had the prince died here in the previous life? In this world, becoming a host of a Star Soul general meant being chosen by one of the 108 primordial Star Souls created by the gods. It was said that once awakened, a host could ascend directly to saint rank, as long as their cultivation kept pace. Ordinary Star Soul masters who wielded artificial imitations were shackled by the laws of heaven and earth. Their cultivation progressed far slower, and invisible barriers suppressed their advancement. For thousands of years, not a single commoner had broken into saint rank. Heaven rank was already the limit of mortals. Heaven rank, great perfection, was the absolute ceiling, achieved only through extreme talent and relentless effort, and Elder Su stood precisely at that peak. To everyone around him, he was respectfully known as Su Half-Saint. A thought flickered through Song Yongxiang's mind. The Eastern continent had yet to establish a systematic path for mortals to break into saint rank. If he applied the techniques he had learned in his previous life to cultivate a saint rank army, wouldn't he dominate an entire era? And the man standing before him, wasn't he the perfect test subject? Excellent. Elder Su would become the first experimental subject of the Mortal Saint Army project. At the same time, Elder Su noticed the strange glint in Song Yongxiang's eyes. A faint sense of unease rose in his chest. Song Yongxiang scratched his head awkwardly. Ahem, senior, you're overthinking it. The only thing in my eyes is boundless admiration for a legendary half-saint like you. Inwardly, he thought, as expected of an old fox tempered by decades in the mortal world. He even caught that. Elder Su narrowed his eyes. Drop the act, boy. I hear from that girl, Gu, you're the host of Zuosi? Even if you wield the Star Soul General Zuosii, with only yellow rank peak cultivation, you shouldn't be able to slay a heaven rank beast. Crossing 3 major realms to kill above your level. How did you do it? Or are you hiding your true strength? Perhaps your cultivation isn't merely yellow rank peak. Or does the Song family harbor some secret the world doesn't know? With Elder Su's remark, the second prince finally connected the dots. And no wonder the Lubu mech he had seen earlier wasn't in its usual color scheme. Song Yongxiang's lips curved into a sly smile. Since they were already thinking along those lines, he might as well let Zuosi take the blame for the Star-Lord system one more time. Believing he had uncovered the truth, the second prince felt even more grateful, convinced that Song Yongxiang had revealed his host identity just to save him. Still, everyone remained fixated on one question. How exactly had he killed a heaven-rank beast across 3 major realms? Fine. He would come clean, partially. After hearing his explanation, they were stunned. Even when rift crystals were processed in industrial furnaces, nothing like that had ever occurred. Song Yongxiang spoke calmly. It's not as simple as burning it. I inscribed a raise onto the rift crystal beforehand, then catalyzed it using alchemical refinement techniques, reversing its structural attributes and triggering spatial collapse. The second prince stared in disbelief. So it involved a raise and alchemy together. No wonder it's impossible to replicate. He had briefly considered learning the technique for future battles. Now, he knew that idea was unrealistic. Just as the group was deep in conversation, Song Yongxiang suddenly sensed a surge of presences closing in. They had already formed a complete encirclement. Milo and spies again. Their objective was obvious: assassinate the second prince of Tiandu. What exactly had he done to earn such relentless hatred? The group immediately extended their senses to estimate enemy numbers. Elder Su, however, kept his attention on Song Yongxiang. What he discovered surprised him. Song's perception was sharper than his own. Even he hadn't detected the hidden heaven rank operative among the enemy ranks. Song Yongxiang pinpointed the presence within seconds. The enemy didn't waste time. The heaven rank captain mech issued the command, target lock. They were seconds away from being reduced to ash. Under Maid Xiaomei's direction, the Imperial Guard switched into shield formation, prepared to die protecting their prince. And of course, Song Yongxiang wasn't standing idle. He flicked 2 soul talismans into the air. Defensive barriers instantly formed above the 2 key figures. Then he hurled a 3rd talisman high overhead. Another layer of protection expanded over everyone, just in case. Even Elder Su was stunned. He had never seen anyone casually deploy 3 level 5 defensive arrays in rapid succession. Before Su could fully process it, Song Yongxiang tossed something toward him. Elder Su, take this. I'll leave those 2 under your protection. Watch out for the hidden expert. Elder Su caught what Song Yongxiang had thrown. One glance inside the bottle was enough to stun him all over again. The enemy, however, had no intention of giving them time to chat. At their captain's command, full firepower unleashed. The second prince's position was instantly drowned under artillery from every direction. After the first barrage subsided, Xiaomei spun around to check on the prince. He was unharmed. Even more shocking, the defensive arrays Song Yongxiang had set up were absorbing incoming soul beam fire. That was absurdly overpowered. Using that brief window, Song Yongxiang stepped out of the protected zone. That heaven-rank captain mech is yours, he told Commander Liu. Liu immediately assembled his Imperial Guard captain mech. According to enemy intel, Liu had been heavily injured earlier and should be at his limit. Confident in that assessment, the opposing captain accepted a one-on-one duel without hesitation. Their weapons collided in a thunderous clash. Meanwhile, the remaining enemy troops began searching for Song Yongxiang. Just as one soldier transmitted coordinates, Song Yongxiang, piloting the Lu Bu mech, suddenly appeared behind him. Time to give them a proper lesson in assassination. The techniques he'd learned under Asan and Taiyuan during his previous life were finally coming out in full force. The sudden ambush threw the enemy ranks into chaos. Gunfire erupted wildly. Friend and foe indistinguishable. Before they could even switch to close combat mode, Song Yongxiang had already blurred into their midst. One clean slash split a mech straight down the middle. A horizontal sweep took down another instantly. The next soldier barely recovered from the phantom-like movement and was cut down, weapon and all. Still, it had to be admitted, every one of them was Earth rank, and their armor was sturdier than Tiandu's. For someone at Yellow rank peak, holding this pace was taxing. At the same time, Commander Liu remained locked in fierce combat with Milan's heaven rank captain. But watching his men fall one after another inevitably shook the captain's focus. And Liu, as a heaven rank expert, would never let that lapse go unpunished. Commander Liu unleashed a technique, Kylin tail sweep. The explosive strike smashed into the enemy mech, leaving visible damage. The second prince could now clearly see that Song Yongxiang was even more lethal in mech versus mech combat than he had been against the beasts. His kill speed was terrifying. Nearly every move ended a fight, and even more impressive, he deliberately spared certain enemies alive, preserving witnesses for later interrogation. Seeing the tide shift, the second prince immediately ordered full support for Song Yongxiang. The Imperial Guard switched to long-range artillery mode in unison. Suppressive fire poured down on the enemy ranks. Under that cover, Song Yongxiang accelerated straight into the enemy's rear formation. One move, falling leaf slash. The soldiers hiding behind cover were cut down in a single sweep. The second prince had watched every second of it to his shock. Song Yongxiang had been using the Black Armor Guard's 7 steps upon the star's movement technique the entire time. Only elite members were permitted to learn it. The Black Armor Guard had existed for years, but its golden era dated back 20 years, to the 6 Black Armor elites. Their leader, Song Lang, reached heaven rank at 18. Song Yongxiang was also from the Song family. Was there a connection? Unfortunately, the other 5 perished in the Imperial Mausoleum War. The position of Supreme Commander remained vacant for 7 years before being inherited by the current female commander, Delan. She upheld absolute neutrality and never involved herself in factional politics. Yet moments ago, the prince had clearly seen Song Yongxiang execute her signature technique, Moonfall Slash. Did the Song family have secret ties with the Black Armor Guard? If he could bring the Song family into his faction, perhaps the Guard would no longer remain strictly neutral. On the battlefield, As Song Yongxiang continued hunting down enemy soldiers, the Imperial guards around the prince shifted from defense to offense, providing steady long-range support. Even Elder Su was busy studying the defensive arrays Song Yongxiang had deployed, and that momentary distraction allowed 2 enemy soldiers to slip through. One was instantly pinned to the ground by the Skypiercer halberd that Song Yongxiang hurled across the field, but with only one weapon in hand, he couldn't eliminate both simultaneously. The remaining soldier raised his great blade high overhead. He planned to eliminate the seemingly harmless old man first. The blade crashed down, kicking up a cloud of dust. What he never expected was that ordinary old man was none other than Su Half-Saint, foremost of Tiandu's 3 swords. He didn't even need a mech. With his bare hands, he caught the full-force strike of an Earth-ranked Star Soul Master. The enemy soldier froze in disbelief. Who blocks a Star Soul General's attack empty-handed? Elder Su slowly began gathering soul power. It was time. Just the aura alone, an aura infinitely close to Saint rank, was already enough to scare that grunt so badly he looked like he was about to twist out of shape. Seizing the instant the enemy froze up, Elder Su launched himself off the ground, then drove a savage kick straight into him. The blow instantly shattered one of the Star Soul General's arms. Right after that, soul power began surging non-stop into Elder Su's right hand, and with one fierce swing, he tore off the enemy's other arm too. Even the Imperial guards watching from the sidelines were rattled by the sight of Elder Su dismantling a mech barehanded. They were genuinely afraid that if he got too into it, he might start taking them apart too. Even Song Yongxiang had to admit it. The old man really knew how to show off. He was clearly avoiding the enemy's heavy armor on purpose, and only targeting the fragile joints, all to create the shocking effect of dismantling a mech with his bare hands. Most likely, he was trying to provoke that heaven-ranked powerhouse hiding somewhere in the shadows into revealing himself. And just as expected, the enemy squad leader who had been locked in combat with Commander Liu the whole time realized he had no chance of beating him, suddenly raised both clasped fists toward the sky and begged their hidden holy envoy to step in. At that very moment, a crimson figure appeared atop a nearby high-rise. So this holy envoy, with a bullhead mask and a strikingly curvy figure, was the real reason the second prince died here in the previous life. She was an inspector of the Pingchin sacred sect, a sect the world openly regarded as a demonic sect. Even the second prince looked visibly tense, because that sect controlled more than half of the military and political power within the Milan nation. According to Song Yongxiang's memories from his previous life, the peak combat power on the eastern continent consisted of 2 god-ranked patriarchs who had each lived for more than 400 years, one backing the Milan nation and the other backing the Shishui nation. 400 years ago, after the Eastern Heavenly Emperor vanished without a trace, King Mile seized the opportunity to prop up the late emperor's illegitimate son as a puppet and rule from behind the curtain. Meanwhile, the eldest, imperial princess, Princess Sishui, carved out the eastern 3 provinces, founded the Sishui nation, and declared herself empress. But after that illegitimate son grew up, he unexpectedly joined forces with the Sishui nation, defeated King Mile, and eventually established what became the present-day Tiandu.Ace for King Mile. When he was on the verge of death, he was saved by a god-ranked powerhouse, and with that person's help, the present-day Milan nation was founded. And the god-ranked figure who saved King Mile was none other than the Pingchin Patriarch, founder of the Pingchin sacred sect, a terrifying old monster rumored to have lived for over 4 centuries. But that was exactly what made this so strange. The Pingchin sacred sect had always been more like the cautious, moderate faction aligned with Tiandu. They had never supported the Milan nation's military expansion, and during the final battle of Tiandu City in the previous life, that god-ranked patriarch never made a move either. Could something have changed inside the Milan nation? Something even Song Yongxiang didn't know about. At that moment, the holy envoy let out a sinister smile and pulled a red soul talisman from her chest. In the next second, she leapt straight off the rooftop, while beginning to construct her Star Soul General mech in midair. But just as the mech was about to finish forming, her figure suddenly vanished from the sky. Commander Liu didn't even have time to react, before a violent explosion erupted right beside him. Even though he was also heaven rank, Commander Liu was crushed in a single exchange. And at that moment, Song Yongxiang recognized the mech she was piloting. It was actually the Milan nation's next-generation mass-produced unit, codenamed Yijisi. But by all rights, that model should not have appeared this early. After defeating Commander Liu with ease, the holy envoy immediately turned and charged straight toward the second prince's position. Faced with a witch, this terrifying Elder Su finally pulled out his mech soul talisman. He was done playing around. Before long, the two clashed head-on for the very first time, and the battle between an old-generation machine and a next-generation unit officially began. Relying purely on the performance gap of her next-generation mech, that busty witch actually overwhelmed Elder Su, the man hailed as the foremost of Tiandu's 3 swords. from the very first exchange, leaving him almost no room to fight back. The shockwaves from their clash were so violent that everyone nearby could barely stay on their feet. The soul power storm exploding in all directions was so brutal that even the two level 5 defensive arrays Song Yongxiang had set up in advance started showing cracks not long after. Fortunately, before the arrays completely shattered, Song Yongxiang had already reached the others. A battle at this level was far beyond even Song Yongxiang's ability to interfere with. The only thing he could do for now was get the second prince and senior Shangguan out to a safe distance first, then figure out the next move. Once he confirmed they had safely withdrawn, Elder Su finally stopped holding back and went all in against the witch. With a sudden burst of force from his legs, he sent the witch flying backward in one shot. But using the opening created by that recoil, she flicked two throwing knives toward the direction Song Yongxiang was retreating. Good thing Song Yongxiang's movement technique was slick enough, or that strike really might have tagged him. But Elder Su got distracted for just a split second when he glanced at Song Yongxiang, and the witch immediately seized the chance and kicked him flying. He skidded across the ground for a long distance before barely managing to steady himself. Just as Elder Su was still searching for where the enemy had gone, the witch suddenly appeared behind him, ready to end the fight with a blade from the rear. Luckily, Elder Su was a battle-hardened veteran. In an instant, he drove a reverse sword thrust straight behind him. Seeing that, the witch had no choice but to slash her military saber sideways, forcibly altering both of their trajectories and barely opening up a little distance. But Elder Su clearly had no intention of letting go of such a rare close-range opening. He twisted his body by force just to keep pressing in and staying glued to her. Unfortunately, her mech's performance was simply above his dot in the blink of an eye. She vanished from right in front of him. Not only did she evade his attack, she also jumped with pinpoint precision right behind him and used the chance to land another kick. After recalling her twin blades, the witch's presence surged all over again, and she immediately shot toward Elder Su once more after kicking him away, but only when she closed in. Did she realize Elder Su had been standing there charging up a finishing move the whole time, just waiting for this stupid woman to throw herself right into it? In the next second, a massive surge of golden soul power blasted into the sky, a move Elder Su had originally reserved for a certain Saint-rank Star Soul General. He never expected he'd end up using it today just to cut down a witch like this. Honestly, it was almost a waste. At that moment, the short blade in her hand suddenly began to crack apart and disintegrate piece by piece, while the soul power that had originally been fired as one concentrated blast split apart into several streams of energy, all of them chasing straight toward the witch. Even with the next generation mech, there was no way she could dodge this kind of tracking soul power bombardment. Along with a sharp scream from the witch, those multiple golden energy beams merged back into one, then slammed violently into the ground below. Just when everyone thought the battle was already over, another black silhouette emerged once again from the smoke, covering the battlefield. As expected of a next-generation mass-produced Star Soul General from the Milan Nation, that mech had actually managed to endure Elder Su's world-shattering strike head-on. Its mobility far surpassed Tiandu's Wei Yuan-type mech, and even its armor strength was above the Milan Nation's own Yufuluo. Even though that last strike had definitely injured the witch quite badly, she had clearly still been holding something back. The moment she entered a string of mysterious code into the mech's control panel, the heavily damaged machine instantly restored itself to perfect condition and erupted with soul power fluctuations, even stronger than before. Even the second prince, watching from afar, could feel that this pressure had already completely overwhelmed Elder Su, but Song Yongxiang recognized it immediately. This was the Heavenly Demon Disintegration mode developed by the Milan Nation. So the people from the Pingchin Sacred Sect had actually installed that system into this prototype unit. No wonder the second prince couldn't escape death here in the previous life. At that moment, Elder Su, having just unleashed his ultimate move, was still standing there regulating his condition when the witch suddenly vanished from right in front of him. By the time he caught sight of her again, one of his mech's arms had already been cut off. Before Elder Su could even react, he was kicked flying once again. And while he was still airborne, the witch appeared behind him all over again. Without giving him even a moment to respond, she turned him into a human soccer ball and kicked him around through the sky. Elder Su never expected her speed to rise by this much. If he wanted to survive, he had to find a way to strike back. But just when he finally managed to grab hold of the witch's thigh, she actually used his body for leverage and drove a blade straight through his mech in one smooth motion. Even so, Elder Su still showed terrifying grit. Despite being badly wounded, he refused to let go of her leg. But by now, that witch had clearly gone completely berserk. She raised her blade and brought it down straight toward Elder Su's head, and even someone as strong as a half-step saint like him could not withstand that kind of blow. With the mech critically damaged, its construct system began to automatically disengage, leaving Elder Su in nothing but his mortal body as he crashed hard from the sky to the ground. After suffering one devastating blow after another, he could only use the last of his strength to fumble toward his pocket, slowly pulling out the super realm pill Song Yangxiang had given him earlier. This had originally been one of Song Yangxiang's trump cards. For anyone below Earth rank, taking it could forcibly raise their cultivation by an entire major realm for a short period of time. Given Elder Su's half-step saint realm, the medicine's effect would definitely be heavily weakened, but if it was only enough to push him up by one minor stage for a short time, that should still be more than possible. In that case, this was perfect. Elder Su could test it for Song Yangxiang and find out whether the super realm pill actually worked on a half-step saint stuck at a bottleneck like him. But the moment Elder Su swallowed the super realm pill Song Yangxiang had left for him, he suddenly felt his entire consciousness slip straight into his inner world. And for Elder Su, the deepest obsession blocking his path to saint rank was, in truth, a memory from more than 30 years ago. Back then, he was already the foremost of Nanzhou's three swords, yet he still suffered a crushing defeat in Quancheng of the Shishui nation. He was blasted straight down from a 100-jang-high wall in utter humiliation. In those days, he had still been a long-haired, devastatingly handsome young man. As a mere mortal, he had already reached mid-stage heaven rank at the age of 33. A talent that could only be called monstrous. And the ones who had traveled with him to the Shishui nation that time were the other two members of Nanzhou's three swords. One was Gu Ying, who had reached early stage heaven rank at 30. The other was He Kun, who had done the same at 34. The moment they saw their big brother, Su Heming, beaten into such a miserable state, Gu Ying and He Kun immediately moved to step in. After all, when Nanzhou's three swords had sworn brotherhood back then, they had made a vow. If they could not live together, then they would at least die together. Elder Su was naturally moved by that loyalty, but the enemy standing before them was simply far too overwhelming. Not only was she the host of the Star Soul General Wen Zhang, she was also holding Su Heming's beloved, Huang Suni, captive in her hands. Seeing the situation for what it was, Gu Ying and He Kun immediately constructed their mechs and stood off against her. But that move clearly displeased her. She casually fired a few soul power beams, and just like that, both of their mechs were blasted into forced disengagement. In the blink of an eye, the pressure she released nearly crushed all three of them straight into the ground. As one of the four saint rank pillars safeguarding the Shishui nation, Huang Miaoyuing was never an opponent a few mortals like them could hope to resist. At that moment, Huang Miaoyuing stepped out from beside the star coffin and looked down coldly at the three men below. Su had indeed been a once-in-a-generation genius who stepped into heaven rank at 30, but in her eyes, everything below saint rank was nothing but insects. Killing the three of them would have taken no more than the lift of a hand. Fortunately, Huang Suni kept pleading for mercy at the side. Otherwise, Nanzhou's three swords would likely have all fallen there that day. After all, Huang Suni possessed the rare inborn host physique, a once-in-a-century talent and someone of immense importance to the Huang family. And yet, on that very day, Elder Su had actually tried to elope with her. That was no different from trampling directly on the Huang family's pride. But Huang Miaoyuing was also worried that killing the three of them on the spot would leave an indelible heart demon inside Huang Suni, so she proposed a deal instead. The terms were simple. If the three of them willingly left and swore never to step into the Shishui nation again, then she would spare their lives that day. Hearing such a humiliating condition, Elder Su flew into a rage and yanked out his saber, raising it behind his head, then cut off a lock of his own hair before everyone's eyes. With that, he swore that no matter how long it took, he would find a path for mortals to step into saint rank, and until the day he broke through, he would never again set foot in the Shishui nation. But when that day finally came, when he entered saint rank, that would be the day he returned to Shishui to formally ask for Huang Suni's hand. There and then, he swore to the heavens once more that one day, he would shatter that 100-jang wall, take the woman he loved, and free her from the Huang family's prison. Hearing those words, Huang Suni broke down in tears and said to her beloved, "All right, I'll wait for you." As Elder Su recalled those words now, golden light suddenly burst from his eyes, because today might truly be the day he had waited decades for, the day he finally stepped into saint rank, the day his dream came true. Even he had never imagined that a single promise made all those years ago would become the miracle that pushed him through to saint rank. Watching from a distance, Song Yunxiang knew perfectly well that Elder Su's saint rank power was only being forced up by the super realm pill, and there was no way it could last for long. But even so, this proved one crucial thing. The belief they had clung to for so long, that only a host could ever step into saint rank, was not some absolute law after all. Outside force could break that limit too. From this moment on, the divide between saint and mortal would no longer be the final line that defined a Star Soul Master's ceiling. Once he found the right chance later, Song Yongxiang could try teaching Elder Su some true transcendent cultivation arts. After all, in his previous life, he had collected plenty of that kind of stuff across the central continent and the southern continent. There had to be at least one technique that suited Elder Su. And now that Elder Su had stepped into first layer saint rank, he finally understood why Huang Miaoying had once said, "Below saint rank, all are ants." Because the gap between heaven rank and saint rank was just that absurd. At this very moment, the witch on the opposite side was just like Elder Su had once been, pinned in place by that overwhelming pressure, unable to move at all. She clearly knew she should take this chance to interrupt his breakthrough. Yet, she simply couldn't do it. All she could do was watch helplessly as Elder Su constructed his mech once again. Then, with a light wave of his right hand, the witch was blown away like a kite with its string cut. After barely regaining her balance, she still tried to push Heavenly Demon Disintegration mode to maximum output and make one final all-or-nothing gamble. But there was no way Elder Su was going to give her that chance. And with the power Elder Su now held, he did not even need a sword anymore if he wanted to kill her. He merely gave a casual flick of his right hand, and in the next second, a monstrous sword aura thousands of meters long and 100 zhang high exploded into existence. No matter how tough that witch's mech defense was, it still could not withstand Elder Su's strike. Even so, Elder Su ultimately held back. That attack only destroyed her mech and did not harm the pilot herself. And as soon as that blow ended, the Saint rank experience granted by the Super Realm Pill came to an end as well. Just like that, the battle ended with Elder Su pulling off a brutal comeback from the brink of defeat. Meanwhile, the Heaven rank squad leader from the Milon Nation, who had also been hiding in the shadows and observing the fight, immediately tried to run the moment he saw their holy envoy defeated. But the instant he turned around, he found himself already surrounded by the Yuanding city garrison, and the rest of the people who had come with him had already been subdued by the city guards who arrived afterward. And so, the Battle of Yuanding City was officially declared a sweeping victory for Tiandu. But the once bustling and prosperous city had been reduced to ruins, with broken walls and wreckage everywhere after the battle. After the fighting ended, President Gu also arrived at the scene in her mech. Seeing her arrival, the second prince immediately stepped forward to meet with her. As a member of the second prince's faction, the Gu family's failure to arrive in time and protect him left President Gu full of guilt. But the second prince had no intention of blaming her, because President Gu had shown remarkable foresight by bringing Song Yongxiang here. And more than Song Yongxiang's overwhelming combat power, what the second prince valued most were the endless ways he adapted under pressure. Meanwhile, while the two of them were talking, Song Yongxiang bent down and picked up the Yizhishi soul talisman the witch had dropped. Then he quietly slipped it into his pocket. After that, he went over to check on Elder Su, who had just suffered severe injuries. Yet Elder Su only sighed in regret and said that if his condition had been a little better just now, he might really have been able to grasp the key to a true breakthrough through the Super Realm Pill. Hearing that, Song Yongxiang immediately lowered his voice and cautiously asked whether he wanted another pill later, so he could take it back, find a secluded place, and slowly study and comprehend its deeper mysteries. Hearing that, Elder Su froze on the spot. He even carefully looked around first, making sure no one else was nearby, before lowering his voice and quietly asking Song Yongxiang whether he really had a second 6-star pill that precious. Song Yongxiang instantly looked a little awkward and could only let out a dry laugh. After all, a pill that was priceless to everyone else was something he could practically refine by the batch without much effort. Then, in the very next second, Elder Su suddenly jabbed Song Yongxiang with his elbow and bluntly said he had already figured it out. Song Yongxiang was definitely not the host of Zuosi. Elder Su had spent years tempering himself in the mortal world and had explored more secret realms than he could count. In his eyes, Song Yongxiang had most likely stumbled into some heaven-defying opportunity inside a secret realm. Still, he made one thing clear. He had no interest in digging into Song Yongxiang's secrets, but in return, he could help Song Yongxiang clean up every trace left behind in the city and let him keep pretending to be Zuosi's host in peace. He would count that as repaying half of Song Yongxiang's favor first. Sure enough, the old man hadn't spent all those years roaming the world for nothing. He had actually seen straight through it. Song Yongxiang had no better option now but to roll with it. Besides, this old man could also make for a pretty useful test subject. After spending the whole day either fighting or killing, it really was about time to head back and get some rest. Hearing that, Elder Su said he also wanted to return to the gatekeeper's quarters and properly treat his injuries. Under Secretary Xiao Yu's arrangements, the two of them boarded a return airship together and temporarily left the battlefield behind. 10 days later, inside the first-year boys' dormitory of Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy, Song Yongxiang was currently in seclusion. cultivating. These past few days of closed-door cultivation had pushed him straight into early-stage Earth rank, but at the same time, he had completely burned through all of his medicinal materials. Looks like it was time to hit the pharmacy and restock hard. But just before heading out, Song Yongxiang realized that while he had been in seclusion, a whole pile of messages had piled up unread, especially from that obsessive senior girl who had been spamming him non-stop every single day. Looking at that absurd wall of unread messages, Song Yongxiang figured that if he didn't block her now, he'd only be letting himself down. But the second he finished blocking senior Shangguan, President Gu's call came in. Fortunately, President Gu was calling with two pieces of good news. First, she had successfully completed the official certification of Song Yongxiang as the host of the Star Soul General Zuo Si, meaning Song Yongxiang was now the legally recognized owner of Zuo Si. Second, the first prototype batch based on the Wei Yuan type modification plan Song Yongxiang had submitted earlier had already been completed, and President Gu was inviting him over to the workshop for testing. Although the Taishuan heavy industry factory had unfortunately been destroyed during the Beast Tide, all of the master mechanics inside had thankfully survived. And now that they were all helping with reconstruction inside the academy, things had moved forward much faster than expected. Looking at the Mecha Martial Academy in the distance, Song Yongxiang could not help but let out a quiet sigh. This time, both the academy and Yuanding City had suffered terrible losses. But at the very least, because of his intervention, the Beast Tide had been suppressed, the Milan Nation scheme had been ruined, and even the classmates and instructors who were originally meant to die had survived. Maybe that really did count as changing the course of fate. A few days earlier, before leaving, the second prince had also come to see Song Yongxiang in person. As for those special Milan Nation souvenirs Song Yongxiang gave him, hopefully they would be of some use. After all, Song Yongxiang had looted them off Milan prisoners himself. After that, Elder Su came by as well and personally told him that every trace of evidence left in the city had already been cleaned up. Song Yongxiang could continue playing the role of Zuo Si's host without worry. But while thinking about that, Song Yongxiang suddenly realized he had just made a mistake. That obsessive senior girl had also taken a rift crystal from him before, and she still had not transferred the money. Looks like he would have to drag her back out of the blacklist after all. On the way to the academy workshop, Song Yongxiang suddenly noticed two instructors adjusting a memorial monument for the dead nearby. He had thought he was already numb to things like this, but when he actually saw the long list of names carved onto the spirit memorial, he still felt a heaviness in his chest. What Song Yongxiang did not know was that while he had left Mecha Martial Academy to support another front, the Zuo Si statue had also been damaged this badly. And among the many memorial tablets and missing person records, he saw a familiar name appear on the list of the missing. Not long afterward, Song Yongxiang arrived at the Academy Workshop training grounds as promised. President Gu then began introducing the man beside her, Chief Mechanic Nango, from the Yuanding City forging plant of Taishuan Heavy Industry. At present, he was the one leading a whole team of mechanics in charge of producing these prototype units. After that, President Gu also introduced Song Yongxiang to Master Nango. The moment Master Nango learned that Song Yongxiang was the hero who had turned the tide during the Beast Tide crisis, the old man completely lost his composure. What happened next scared everyone present half to death. Master Nanguo suddenly clasped his fists, dropped to both knees on his own, and respectfully called out to Song Yongxiang, "Greetings, Mr. Song." Song Yongxiang was dumbfounded. The old man had dropped to his knees out of nowhere, and a bow that big was way more than he could accept. Just as he was about to help Master Nango back up, he finally learned that this kneeling was meant as repayment for saving his life. Back then, Master Nanguo and the other mechanics had been trapped inside Taichuan Heavy Industry by vicious beasts and were on the verge of death. It just so happened that Song Yongxiang passed by and killed those beasts, which was the only reason they survived. So that kneel was not just on behalf of Master Nango alone. It represented the gratitude of all the mechanics who had survived with him. That left Song Yongxiang in a pretty awkward spot. In truth, he had really only happened to pass by that day, so he still felt a little unworthy of receiving such a gesture. But right then, Master Nanguo suddenly added that he had one more presumptuous request, and hoped Song Yongxiang would grant it. To stop the old man from pulling something even crazier, Song Yongxiang could only brace himself and agree to at least hear him out. And the question Master Nanguo asked was whether the design drafts for these prototype mechs had all truly been drawn by Song Yongxiang himself. Song Yongxiang was baffled. What kind of question was that? He had only added some of his own ideas and improvements. It was not like that should have caused such a huge reaction, but to everyone's utter shock, after getting Song Yongxiang's confirmation, Master Nanguo immediately asked to take Song Yongxiang as his teacher. Even President Gu could not sit still after hearing that. Master Nanguo was a 4th rank mechanic. How could someone like him possibly ask a first-year student to be his master? With Master Nanguo's skill, a good number of academy instructors were not even qualified to stand beside him. But right then, Master Nanguo cut her off and said solemnly, Judging from the design drafts Mr. Song provided, his craftsmanship has most likely already surpassed that of a 6th-rank mechanic. And I, a mere 4th-rank mechanic, am not even worthy of carrying a 6th-rank master's shoes. That is why I'm willing to recommend Mr. Song as Nanzhou's representative for the 2nd-generation mass-produced Star Soul General Design Convention in Tiandu 3 months from now. Hearing Master Nanguo say that, Song Yongxiang could not help but think back to Tiandu's 2nd-generation mass-produced Star Soul General from his previous life, the Hengyi model. Unfortunately, because of one problem after another, that project had died before it was ever fully born and never made it to the final battle of Tiandu City. Still, there was time before that became urgent. He could deal with it after he settled matters back home first, so Song Yongxiang quickly moved on to testing the prototype mechs he had designed. The first unit he constructed was this artillery-type Weiyuan mech, a model built specifically to boost the overall firepower of combat squads. The heavy cannon mounted on its right shoulder could unleash devastating soul power bombardment. Once a squad ran into a dense pack of vicious beasts, a single soul power shell would be enough to deal wide-area damage on a massive scale. Meanwhile, the honeycomb launcher mounted on the left shoulder had even broader applications. It could fire 6 armor-piercing rounds at once, either locking onto a single target or spreading across multiple enemies. And once those rounds struck, they would lodge themselves deep into the enemy's body, after which the pilot could remotely trigger a second detonation. That meant future squads would finally have a reliable armor-breaking answer when facing heavily armored beasts or heavily equipped infantry. Of course, while this model had improved soul power conversion efficiency, its soul power consumption was still far higher than older units. So, within a combat squad, it was best suited for users with large reserves and fast recovery. After finishing the artillery model's test run, Song Yongxiang immediately moved on to the next prototype. He then switched over to the flying sword Weiyuan model. This version could simultaneously release 8 flying swords controlled remotely through soul power, allowing a single mech to bombard and suppress multiple targets at once. That said, it also came with a steep operating difficulty. So for now, it could only be assigned to a small number of elite pilots. Then, when it came to the final shield gun prototype, President Gu could not help asking, isn't this basically just a shield paired with a firearm? Compared to the first two, it doesn't seem nearly as impressive. The moment she said that, Master Nanguo could not sit still anymore. He quickly explained that while the first two models were indeed shocking in terms of technical breakthroughs, this one's greatest strength was not revolutionary innovation at all. It was its tactical value. At that point, Song Yongxiang asked President Gu to set up a batch of high-speed moving targets modeled after Huodu-type beasts. He also specifically asked her to set up a lot of them, because only then would this mech's true strengths really show. Facing those one-to-one holographic simulations, Song Yongxiang immediately switched the cannon in his hands into scatter fire mode, then activated a close-range defensive barrier. As the cannon in his hands kept spewing fire, the charging enemy projections were instantly swallowed by a sea of flames. Seeing that, President Gu finally understood the true tactical value of this unit. If it replaced traditional shield bearers on the front line, what kind of battlefield scene would that create? While all 3 prototypes still had their share of flaws, they were already extremely close to what Song Yongxiang had originally envisioned. After disengaging the construct, Song Yongxiang immediately told Master Nanguo to head back soon and have his people produce more of them as quickly as possible. After that, Song Yongxiang asked President Gu for one more favor. About a month from now, he hoped she could lead a group of elites and bring these prototype mechs to the southern frontier wall to support him in battle. As for the exact reason, Song Yongxiang could not explain it yet. Still, he did tell her that he already had reliable information. In 1 month, something major was going to go wrong over there. And right now, he had to return to the Song family first to make preparations. When the time came, he would contact her in advance. After hearing that, President Gu's suspicion only deepened even further. Meanwhile, after leaving Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy, Song Yongxiang immediately called the Hong Clan Merchant Guild. On one hand, he wanted them to purchase a batch of medicinal materials for his cultivation. On the other, he asked them to arrange the nearest airship back to the Song family for him. But just as Song Yongxiang arrived at Yuanding City Air Harbor, he suddenly spotted an extremely familiar figure near the front desk. And the moment she turned around, Song Yongxiang instantly remembered who that little girl was. The memory she had left him in his previous life was simply far too heavy. In his previous life, after the beast tide erupted, Yuanding City was almost completely wiped out. Back then, Song Yongxiang had still been nothing but a useless waste, and all he could do was flee the city together with the refugee crowd. But along the way, they were attacked by vicious beasts several times, forcing the refugee group farther and farther south until they ended up entering the Death Desert. At the time, everyone believed there would be no beasts inside the desert, so the group stopped at an oasis to rest. By then, Song Yongxiang had already sunk into total despair and was sitting alone in an open area, staring blankly into space. That was when a little girl suddenly ran over to him, and curiously asked if he was a Star Soul Master, because she had seen the Mech Soul Talisman in his hand. Before Song Yongxiang could even answer, she had already held out the bun in her hand and said she wanted to treat him to it. In her mind, as long as he ate his fill, he would have the strength to protect the refugees traveling with them. Even though Song Yongxiang himself had not eaten for many days at that point, every time he thought about how he was nothing more than a piece of trash who could only fight for 3 minutes, even the desire to eat disappeared. Besides, in that kind of situation, food that precious should have been saved for her and her family. But no matter what they said, their bodies were far more honest than their mouths. In the very next second, the two of them were already sitting there, each holding half a bun and quietly eating. But halfway through, the little girl suddenly asked whether he was a student from Mecha Martial Academy, because her older sister wore the same uniform he did, and her sister was a third-year student. Before the refugees escaped the city, her sister and her teachers had all joined the battle to hold back the beasts and buy time for everyone else to flee. The moment Song Yongxiang heard that, he already understood that her sister had probably died, because before he escaped, the battle had already become completely one-sided, and her sister most likely had to... Maybe it was the expression that flashed across Song Yongxiang's face just now, but the little girl immediately seemed to realize something. In an instant, her eyes were already brimming with tears, and yet, even then, she showed a strength far beyond what a child her age should have had. With tear-streaked cheeks, she told Song Yongxiang that one day she would become a mechanic just like her father, and that she would build a Star Soul General even stronger than the Wei Yuan-type mech, and wipe out every last vicious beast. After saying that, she even urged Song Yongxiang to hurry up and finish the bun, because only then would he have the strength to protect her. She even said that half of that bun counted as her betrothal gift to him. From now on, Song Yongxiang had to become her one and only personal test Star Soul Master. Then, with a completely innocent smile, she held out her hand and asked him to pinky swear with her. Looking at that pure, carefree smile on her face, Song Yongxiang felt a faint trace of color return to the life that had long since gone dim. But what he never could have imagined was that the conversation he had with her that day would be the last one. Because while the desert had no human civilization and thus would not draw dimensional rifts, deep beneath those sands slept a group of vicious beasts that had long lain dormant. Back then, Song Yongxiang had already constructed his mech in time and was doing everything he could to hold back the beast assault, but tragedy still came anyway. After he finally managed to kill that centipede beast, he suddenly noticed a familiar arm lying right by his feet. That horrifying discovery wiped away every last trace of the victory he had just won. It was one thing that he had failed to stand shoulder to shoulder with his classmates and teachers from the academy, but in the end, he could not even protect a little girl. What kind of Star Soul Master did that make him? Song Yongxiang threw his head back and roared in anguish, trying to pour out all the grief crushing his chest. The memory ended there. And in the present, that little girl's family was now being stopped by the staff at the boarding gate. The reason was simple. Her father, Tang Jinshui, had just resigned from Taichuan Heavy Industry, which meant he had lost the priority boarding privilege granted to technical staff and their families. On top of that, the air harbor was still under official wartime control after the battle, so their family could only wait until next week's airship to leave Yuanding City. Seeing that, Tang Jinsui's wife, Shen Dai, immediately stepped forward and stopped her husband from causing a scene at the counter. At that moment, Shen Dai's niece, Shen Ruowei, also stepped up and asked whether she could use her status as a Star Soul Master from Mecha Martial Academy to bring her relatives aboard. But the answer she received was that, according to the rules, with her current status, she could only board alone and was not permitted to bring family members with her. Just when the whole family had no idea what to do, Song Yongxiang suddenly appeared behind them and said calmly, "If I use my status to bring them in, that should be allowed, right?" The young woman at the front desk had not even finished processing what he said when Song Yongxiang had already taken out the Supreme 666 Platinum membership card awarded by the Hong Clan Merchant Guild to prove who he was. The people qualified to hold a card like that could be counted on one hand. The staff instantly realized that Song Yongxiang's status was extraordinary. They hurriedly invited him aboard and nervously explained that Manager Hong had already been waiting for his arrival on the ship. Song Yongxiang did not bother saying much in response. He simply walked straight toward the boarding passage. Meanwhile, Tang Jinsui's family was clearly stunned by the scene they had just witnessed. Even Shen Dai could not help quietly asking her husband whether he actually knew Song Yongxiang, but Tang Jinsui only gave a bitter smile and shook his head. Even a chief mechanic from Taichuan Heavy Industry would not necessarily qualify for the Hong Clan Merchant Guild's Supreme card. So how could an ordinary man like him possibly know someone as important as Song Yongxiang? Then, from the side, Shen Ruowei suddenly spoke up and said that she did know Song Yongxiang, because the two of them were both students of Mecha Martial Academy, and she still remembered that during the Beast Tide, Song Yongxiang had personally saved her. So, under the staff's guidance, the whole family was soon led into the magnificent number 1, heavenly cabin. And manager Hong, the man who had arranged Song Yongxiang's ticket, had indeed been waiting there for him. After meeting up, Song Yongxiang also briefly introduced manager Hong to Shin Ruowei's family. Then he followed manager Hong alone into the suite inside the private cabin to discuss a few matters. Manager Hong might look warm and approachable on the surface, but in truth, he was an old fox who knew exactly how to play the game. Earlier, he had presented the level 5 pills gifted by Song Yongxiang to higher-ups, and because of that, he had already been promoted to chief manager of the Nanzhou branch. To secure his ties to Song Yongxiang, he was naturally willing to receive him with the highest level of courtesy possible. This suite itself could completely isolate outside sound and soul power fluctuations, which meant Song Yongxiang could use the time during the journey to refine a new batch of pills. Once everything had been arranged, manager Hong prepared to disembark and leave. Replacing him was a demonkin attendant dressed in a maid outfit. She approached Song Yongxiang with perfect courtesy and softly asked whether he needed any services. The moment Song Yongxiang saw her, he realized that it had actually been many years since he had last seen Demonkin at all. In his previous life, after the crushing defeat in the final battle of Tiandu City, Song Yongxiang had been swept into a spatial rift inside the Imperial Tomb secret realm. When he appeared again, the chaotic space currents had already dragged him all the way to the southern continent. Races like the Demonkin and the Spirit Folk, because of their innate imbalance in the 2 Star Soul veins, had always found it extremely difficult to become true Star Soul masters. On the eastern continent, humanity stood at the top. Demonkin and Spirit Folk were both considered weaker races and had long lived under human protection. But on the southern continent, the situation was the exact opposite. Demonkin and Spirit Folk lived together in harmony, while humans were so rare that most could only learn of their existence through old records. And as a being that rare, Song Yongxiang naturally drew the attention of a god-rank patriarch from the Battleborn clan, who quickly invited him to meet in person. After that, Song Yongxiang entered the Battle Peak lineage and was personally accepted as a direct disciple by the Battle Patriarch. The near-miraculous alchemy skills he possessed now were exactly what he had learned back on the southern continent. Unfortunately, that Battle Patriarch had originally been one of the very few Demonkin hosts who possessed a Star Soul General. But during the Great War 500 years ago, that Star Soul General had been sealed by the 5 Elements Grand Array, which meant Song Yongxiang had no way to copy it through the Star-Lord system. He did not know whether he would ever get the chance to return to the southern continent. After all, that place still held far too many regrets for him, along with too many mysteries that had never been solved. At that moment, the sudden melancholy on Song Yongxiang's face only ended up confusing the cute Demonkin maid. She was probably wondering whether choosing a meal could really be that difficult for such an important guest. So she respectfully handed him the menu and asked him to order. Song Yongxiang had barely turned to ask what the little girl's family wanted to eat, when the little girl instantly sprang up from the sofa and loudly declared that she wanted steamed buns. The moment her mother saw that outburst, she panicked and immediately started scolding her daughter, telling her not to bother Mr. Song. She even added that in a place this luxurious, how could someone ask for something as plain as buns? But while she was still lecturing the child, Song Yongxiang calmly told the maid to bring them 5 servings of buns. Song Yongxiang knew perfectly well that buns were not even on the menu, but that was not a problem. He had money now. If the ship did not have them, then they could simply make them. He even specifically requested that 2 portions be stuffed with radish. And if there were no radishes on board, they could go buy some right now. Faced with the most important guest on the entire airship, the maid naturally did not dare neglect any of his requests. She immediately turned around, took the storage talisman Song Yongxiang handed her, and hurried off to the kitchen to place the order. After the matter of ordering food was settled, Song Yongxiang was just about to rest for a while, when the little girl suddenly ran over to his side and happily asked whether he liked radish-stuffed buns too. In response, Song Yongxiang casually made up an excuse, saying that he had tried them once before and had loved the taste ever since. Hearing that, the little girl lit up and seriously declared that radishes were so healthy and nutritious that no one could possibly dislike them. Then she even pulled out the radish-stuffed bun she had prepared before setting out, and offered it to Song Yongxiang. The moment he saw that painfully familiar bun, Song Yongxiang could not help feeling a wave of emotion rise in his chest. Sure enough, this little thing was exactly the same as in his previous life. Her favorite was still radish-stuffed buns, and seeing how happily and wholeheartedly she ate made her look so adorable that it was impossible not to stare. And after they finished eating that bun, that familiar scene seemed to replay itself before his eyes all over again. But this time, Brother Song had the power to protect Xiaowen. The promise he failed to fulfill in his previous life might finally be one he could keep in this one. Meanwhile, under the head chef's instructions, the Demonkin maid headed to the central garden of the airship, where she borrowed some radishes grown by Miss Jing Hua. Hearing the request, Miss Jing Hua could not help feeling curious herself. Why would such a distinguished guest specifically ask for something as common as steamed buns, and even insist on radish filling? Even so, she warmly told the maid to pass a message to the chef. When making the buns, he could add just a little sugar and honey to the filling, which would make them taste even better. Upon hearing that, the maid happily left carrying the radishes in her arms. At that same moment, two distinguished guests from Heavenly Cabin number 3 arrived at the entrance to the central garden. However, the security staff informed them that the airship was about to depart, and for safety reasons, the central garden was temporarily closed during takeoff. They were asked to come back later. The moment she heard that, the young lady Nayla immediately exploded in anger. She started making a huge scene on the spot and demanded that Feige take her inside right now. While Feige was still trying to calm her down, the glass doors to the central garden suddenly opened, and the maid carrying a bundle of radishes just happened to run out from inside. And just like that, she crashed right into the young lady. As a demonkin maid, her first instinct was to hurry over and help clean the dirt off the young lady's clothes. But what she got in return was Feige's sudden attack. He drove a brutal kick straight into her throat, and he clearly did not hold back. The maid was sent smashing through the glass doors and flying straight into the central garden. Even after attacking her, Feige still was not done. He continued mocking her, sneering at her identity as a lowly demonkin servant, as if beating her was not enough. He then turned around and viciously stomped all over the radishes that had fallen to the ground. Seeing the radishes that Song Yongxiang had specifically requested being trampled like that, the maid forced herself to crawl forward through the pain, still trying to apologize to the noble brat. But just because she grabbed Feige's pant leg for one trembling second and begged him to stop, she was rewarded with yet another round of savage beating. Watching him assault a service worker so openly, even one of the nearby guards could not stomach it anymore and moved to step in. But before he could, Nayla blocked him first. She even pulled out a storage talisman and casually explained that her older brother's family had once been killed by rebellious demonkin slaves, so Feige tended to lose control the moment he saw demonkin. Besides, she said, it was only some lowly servant anyway. Even if they beat her to death, they could just pay compensation and be done with it. But just as Nayla was still speaking with the guard, a white figure flashed behind her. At the same time, Feige, still fully absorbed in the thrill of beating someone weaker than himself, suddenly found his arm locked in place by a single hand. The one grabbing him was none other than Song Yongxiang, his face overflowing with killing intent. And his reason for stepping in was simple. He wanted to see exactly who thought they could act this arrogant on his ship. The reason he had even come here in the first place was because Xiaolin had just asked him to take her to the central garden to play. And that was exactly why he happened to witness this disgusting scene. A trash tier nobody at black rank like Feige was actually threatening to make trouble for him. Song Yongxiang suddenly felt like finding out who exactly was going to make life difficult for whom. Even with Song Yongxiang holding him down one-handed, Feige was still unwilling to accept it, and even tried to summon his Star Soul General to fight back. But before he could do that, Nayla rushed over and forcefully stopped him. Then she immediately offered a storage talisman loaded with 50,000 lower domain coins as compensation, apologizing to Song Yongxiang and asking him to forgive what she called their momentary lapse in judgment. That sudden humility from Nayla left Feige completely stunned. He could not understand why she was lowering herself like this to beg Song Yongxiang for forgiveness. But in the next instant, Nayla punched him hard and furiously scolded him for even thinking of constructing a Star Soul General on the ship, because she could already sense that Song Yongxiang's cultivation was at least Earth rank or higher. A worthless black rank insect like Feige trying to fight Song Yongxiang was no different from showing off a cheap trick in front of a true master. He was completely out of his depth. Seeing even his own young mistress back down, Feige could only bow his head in humiliation and apologize to Song Yongxiang, begging this powerhouse to let him off. Song Yongxiang did not even bother responding. He simply ignored them and walked straight toward the injured Xiaomeng. Realizing that Song Yongxiang had no interest in continuing the matter with them, Nayla and Feige quickly turned around and left. In truth, Song Yongxiang had already seen through their identity as people from the lower domain nation. Since their values were fundamentally different, there was no point wasting any more time arguing with them. Because the lower domain nation bordered the demonkin settlements of the eastern continent, capturing demonkin slaves and selling them across different nations had long become one of its major industries. In their eyes, demonkin slaves were nothing more than merchandise, with no dignity whatsoever. If Song Yongxiang had not spent so much time living side by side with demonkin in the southern continent in his previous life, he might not have cared about this so deeply either. Looking at the battered Xiaomeng, Song Yongxiang immediately took out a revitalization pill and prepared to give it to her. But the moment she saw the pill, she panicked and rejected his kindness at once, saying that something so precious should never be wasted on someone as cheap as her. Seeing her keep rambling that she was not worthy of such a valuable pill, Song Yongxiang stopped wasting words, grabbed her jaw, and shoved the pill straight into her mouth. A life was still a life, no matter how lowly someone might seem. How could the worth of a person's life be decided by status? Besides, to Song Yongxiang, a mere revitalization pill was nothing. He could casually refine a whole batch of them whenever he wanted. After dealing with everything, Song Yongxiang got ready to take Xiaowen and Shinru away back to the cabin. Xiaowen was still a little upset that she had not gotten to play in the garden, but the moment she saw Sister Xiaomeng crouching down to pick up the scattered radishes, she immediately ran over to help. Even a little girl like her understood what respect meant. That only made those people from the lower domain nation look even more pathetic. Song Yongxiang quietly marked the matter in his heart. If the chance came later, he would definitely make them pay for it. Not long after, Hong Shipping's passenger airship 802 officially prepared to depart. Meanwhile, inside the sealed room of Heavenly Cabin Number 1, Song Yongxiang was focused on refining pills. Every pill laid out on the table had been prepared in advance as a gift for the Song family. His only hope was that when the real crisis arrived, those pills would be enough to help them survive. As for the few level 8 pills set aside separately, those were the final trump cards Song Yongxiang had reserved for himself. At the same time, back in the Song residence of Yong'an City, Uncle Song Mu was reporting to the old master that the flight Song Yongxiang was on would arrive in Yong'an City before noon tomorrow. The moment old master Song Jingzong heard the news, he immediately ordered Song Mu to notify every member of the Song family that they were all required to come home for dinner tomorrow night. He also repeatedly stressed that no matter what happened, Song Mu had to personally go to the air harbor and welcome Song Yongxiang home. Even then, the old master still did not seem fully at ease. Right after that, he ordered that his daughter in the military be contacted so she could dispatch 2 Skyguard warships to escort Song Yongxiang's airship back. The butler originally wanted to voice some concern about moving military warships without authorization, but the old master shut him down on the spot and told him to think up an excuse himself and just get it done. This matter concerned the future of the entire Song family. There could be no mistakes. After Uncle Song Mu left the room, the old master lowered his eyes to the photograph in his hand and muttered softly, "That child Yongxiang not only suddenly healed his damaged soul veins, he also seems to have obtained tremendous power. Daughter-in-law, could it be that everything really is unfolding exactly as you predicted back then?" As a ray of sunlight streamed in through the window, the contents of the photo became clear. It showed a young couple holding their newborn child, the image warm and peaceful. Set in front of the frame were 2 mech soul talismans, one blue and one white. Meanwhile, back in Heavenly Cabin Number 1, just as everyone was beginning their meal, Xiaomeng respectfully informed Song Yongxiang that Miss Jing Hua would be performing a song and dance show in the central court later and asked whether they wanted to go watch it. The name Miss Jing Hua instantly stirred up a lot of fond memories for Song Yongxiang Gadai. In the future, she would become one of Tiandu's 4 great songstresses of wind, flower, snow, and moon, famous as a gifted singer-songwriter. In his previous life, when he had still served in the Black Armor Guard, Song Yongxiang had been one of her loyal fans. Even now, he could still clearly remember several of her most famous works. So the rumor that she had once worked as a resident performer aboard Hong Shipping's vessels was actually true. Looks like later on, he was absolutely going to ask her for a stack of signed posters to keep. As Miss Jing Hua's graceful singing began to flow through the air, Song Yongxiang and the others soon arrived at the performance hall. But because Song Yongxiang was seated in Heavenly Cabin Number 1, the moment he appeared, he instantly attracted countless eyes. Everyone was secretly wondering what kind of big shot was sitting in the Diamond Supreme section, a place reserved only for Hong Merchant Guild's most valued guests. Even stranger, why did this supposed heavyweight look so unbelievably ordinary? Still, by the time they had all just taken their seats, Miss Jing Hua's solo performance had already come to an end. Right after that, the host grandly announced to the audience that the next act was a theatrical piece adapted by Miss Jing Hua from the true story of a certain hero in the Battle of Yuanding City, a man who had turned the tide all by himself against the beast tide. The title of the performance was Battle of Yuanding City. Single rider slays the demon horde. The instant Song Yongxiang heard that title, his heart skipped a beat. He immediately felt that something was very, very wrong. At first, the play on stage still looked normal enough, just the usual Star Soul General fighting off monstrous beasts. But the moment the actor playing the Star Soul General Zuo Ci stepped onto the stage, the whole thing instantly went off the rails. The moment Zuo Ci appeared on stage, the audience instantly exploded with excitement. After all, everyone had already learned from the news that this was the hero who had saved them. Even little Xiaowen, sitting off to the side, was staring with sparkling eyes, completely absorbed in the performance. Then, when the stage version of Zuo Ci transformed into Lu Bu, one young man in the crowd gasped and shouted that he had actually seen that exact scene in the city that day. The second he said that, the surrounding audience's worship for this hero shot up yet another level. At that point, probably the only person in the entire venue dying inside was Song Yongxiang, who was silently screaming in his head, "Why does the actual person involved have to sit here and watch this? This is way too embarrassing." But the truly fatal part was still coming. Somehow, these people had even found out that he saved the second prince. except they went completely off the rails and rewrote the second prince as the second princess. And to make it even worse, they had added an entire "she repays him by devoting herself to him" romance subplot. If the real second prince ever found out about this adaptation, he would probably kill someone on the spot just to liven up the room. And yet, for some insane reason, the chubby kid sitting nearby was watching this ridiculous nonsense with tears in his eyes. Song Yongxiang could only wonder what kind of cursed taste this guy even had. Right now, Song Yongxiang wanted nothing more than to dig a hole and bury himself on the spot. He was so embarrassed, his toes were practically carving out an entire apartment complex in the floor. Maybe it was Song Yongxiang's non-stop sarcastic attitude and obvious secondhand shame. But whatever it was, it completely pissed off the young master sitting beside him. In that boy's eyes, Song Yongxiang was being disrespectful in two ways. First, to Miss Jing Hua, the playwright, and second to the hero portrayed in the play itself. The boy furiously demanded that Song Yongxiang apologize to the hero. Song Yongxiang just rolled his eyes inside. Is this fat kid actually brain damaged? It's just a play. Why is he taking it this seriously? And besides, the actual hero is sitting right here in front of you. Instead of apologizing to him, shouldn't you be over here polishing his shoes? When the young master saw that Song Yongxiang still refused to move, he immediately brought over his two bald bodyguards and started pressing him, insisting he apologize to the hero in the play. Song Yongxiang could not help wondering what the scene would look like if these idiots found out that the so-called hero was him. Seeing how aggressive they were acting, Xiaowen immediately jumped out too, planting herself beside Song Yongxiang and backing him up without hesitation. That instantly made the little fat young master so angry his whole face turned red. Meanwhile, on the other side, the lower domain nation siblings who had clashed with Song Yongxiang earlier decided this was a perfect chance to step in, help out, and maybe smooth things over with him at the same time. So the two of them came over and joined Xiaowen in mocking the little fat young master. Seeing even more people piling in against him, the young master still tried to put on airs and order them all to back off. But Feige directly pulled out his mech soul talisman and coldly said that the fat brat was ruining his viewing experience. If he kept making noise, Feige would teach him a lesson personally. In response, the bald bodyguard on the other side also drew out his soul talisman, clearly ready to throw down with Feige right there. Just as the two sides were about to start fighting because of the mess surrounding Song Yongxiang, Miss Jing Hua on stage finally stepped in and spoke up to calm things down. Sure enough, the second they heard Miss Jing Hua herself speak, those two hotheads instantly softened their attitudes. At a glance, anyone could tell Miss Jing Hua's emotional intelligence was absurdly high. She first thanked the young master for loving her performance, then gently explained, "Opera is adapted from circulating tales, so naturally a great deal of artistic embellishment is added in the process. What appears on stage is not the exact truth." Then she turned towards Song Yongxiang and said sincerely, "Perhaps this young master from cabin number 1 actually took part in that battle himself. As someone who truly witnessed it, if he has complaints about parts of the play that do not match reality, I am more than willing to accept that criticism with humility. It is simply that, from the perspective of commercial performance, some exaggeration during adaptation is unavoidable. So I hope this young master can be understanding." Hearing Miss Jing Hua say that, Song Yongxiang could only give an awkward smile. Honestly, he had not meant to nitpick on purpose. He had just gotten carried away for a moment and blurted it out without thinking. To ease the slightly awkward atmosphere in the room, Miss Jing Hua smoothly suggested that everyone return to their seats and continue enjoying the next part of her performance. Naturally, no one objected. The crowd quickly settled back into place and prepared to keep listening. For Song Yongxiang, it had already been many years since he last heard Miss Jing Hua sing. Ever since he left the Eastern continent in his previous life. As one of Tiandu's future 4 great songstresses, she had too many unforgettable songs, and even now, he still remembered plenty of them by heart. The only question was whether those legendary songs that truly made her famous had already been written yet. And while Song Yongxiang was still lost in those memories, Miss Jing Hua's live performance happened to come to an end. The audience immediately burst into cheers, shouting that they had not had enough and begging her for one more song. Seeing how enthusiastic everyone was, Miss Jing Hua smiled and generously said she would gladly sing another one, but asked what song the audience wanted to hear most. To her surprise, the crowd answered almost in perfect unison. They wanted to hear Burning Star, the unfinished song. Even Song Yongxiang, as one of her old fans from his previous life, remembered clearly that this was the very song that once shot her to fame and secured her place among Tiandu's 4 great songstresses. He had not expected it to already exist this early. The thought filled him with both nostalgia and disbelief. But on stage, Miss Jing Hua apologetically explained that Burning Star was still unfinished. Since the audience was so passionate though, she was willing to let them hear part of it first. As her clear and beautiful voice slowly rose into the air, Song Yongxiang found himself unconsciously humming along under his breath. The imagery in the lyrics pulled him straight back into the turbulent years of his previous life. Once, he had been nothing more than a useless student looked down on by everyone, and yet in the end, he had died in the final battle for the survival of the human race. And now fate had thrown him back to the present. That one line, "The one who returns will be me," felt as if it had been written exactly for the state of mind he was in now. By the time he realized he had completely lost himself in the song, Miss Jing Hua's performance had already ended. When Song Yongxiang finally snapped back to his senses, he noticed that the people around him were all staring at him with strange looks. At that moment, Xiaomeng quietly leaned in and whispered, "Young Master Song, Miss Jing Hua hasn't actually finished writing the ending of this song yet, but just now, you sang the ending for her." And just like that, Song Yongxiang went completely numb. He had gotten too deep into his memories again and, without meaning to, had changed history ahead of time one more time. A song so moving it could break the heart, and a kindred soul so hard to find. The moment Miss Jing Hua heard the line Song Yongxiang had unconsciously sung, her whole body started trembling, because that one line, "The one who returns will be me," had struck a chord in the deepest part of her own past as well. One day, she too would walk openly and proudly into the Lin family of the Shishui nation and face the past she had never escaped. More importantly, the ending of this song had troubled her for a long time. But after hearing the line Song Yongxiang hummed just now, it was as though someone had suddenly cleared away the fog in her mind. The knot in her heart loosened all at once. Maybe that was why, when she looked at Song Yongxiang now, her gaze had already become distant, hazy, and full of complicated emotion. That abrupt shift left Song Yongxiang himself at a loss for how to respond. This accidental change to history, whether it would become a blessing or a disaster, was something he truly could not tell yet. But right then, the soul power around Miss Jing Hua suddenly began to stir violently. As a Star Soul Master, Song Yongxiang could tell at a glance that she was breaking through to the next realm. And sure enough, after being stuck at Yellow Rank Peak for so long, Miss Jing Hua's cultivation finally advanced the moment the knot in her heart was undone. Perhaps because she had suppressed it for far too long, this sudden breakthrough left her body and mind flooded with relief. The sensation was so overwhelming that she nearly cried out on the spot. Even the night sky itself was lit up by the soul power pouring out from Miss Jing Hua's breakthrough. Song Yongxiang had never expected that one careless little spoiler from him would end up pushing her cultivation to the next level. Looking at Miss Jing Hua, who had just broken through and was now in her weakened state, he could not help thinking that maybe this accidental slip of his had actually turned out to be a good thing. But in the very next moment, dark clouds suddenly rolled across the sky, and at the same time, the surrounding space began giving off the unmistakable aura of a dimensional rift. Could it be? Almost simultaneously, alarms blared throughout the ship's command room, because the system had detected a rift reaction in the airspace around them. Seeing that, the captain, as the vessel's highest commander, made the call immediately. Halt acceleration at once and deploy the highest level defensive arrays. Prepare for enemy contact. And not long after the airship's firepower barrier was fully activated, a massive spatial rift tore open across the sky. Pouring out along with it came swarms of Bifang-type beasts. The greatest trait of this kind of beast was its terrifying ability to fight in coordinated groups. In the blink of an eye, the ship came under simultaneous assault from multiple directions. The onboard security personnel reacted immediately and began launching a desperate counteroffensive. Every last person was on edge because they all understood one thing. If the defense line broke, everyone on this ship was dead. Faced with this sudden encirclement, the captain knew full well that the ship's security force alone had no way of patching every breach in time. So he sent out an emergency broadcast across the ship, ordering all Star Soul Masters among the passengers to join the battle. Because if the hull was breached, nobody here was walking away alive. At the same time, the situation in the central court also turned chaotic. Miss Jing Hua nearly lost her footing from the violent shaking of the ship and almost fell off the stage. Fortunately, Song Yongxiang reacted in time and darted forward to catch her before she could fall. As far as the captain's judgment went, Song Yongxiang fully agreed. From the look of things, the ship's defensive arrays were not going to last much longer. These beasts clearly were not just passing through. They meant to wipe out everyone on the ship, along with the ship itself. Could this be yet another disaster triggered because he had once again changed the course of history? Before long, the beasts pinpointed the weakest spot in the ship's defensive barrier and began concentrating all their firepower there. The moment the captain received that report, he wanted to dispatch the security team to reinforce the breach, but the communications officer urgently told him that the fighting at the bow was already too intense, and the security team was pinned down there with no way to pull back. Faced with that reality, the captain could only place his last hope on the distinguished guests in the heavenly cabins, praying that one of the true powerhouses among them would step up and fight. Meanwhile, the situation in the central court was no better. Miss Jing Hua, despite having just broken through, immediately joined the effort to evacuate the crowd. And right at that very moment, several beasts circling above the airship increased their bombardment and unleashed full-force attacks against the array's weak point. Under the relentless barrage, cracks finally began spreading across the upper section of the defensive formation. In the very next second, the beast's bombardment had already started spilling into the garden itself. Just as the dancers performing alongside Miss Jing Hua were about to be crushed by falling chunks of stone, a small defensive array suddenly snapped into place above them and blocked the debris for them. And at that moment, Miss Jing Hua immediately realized that the one who had saved them was Song Yongxiang, who had thrown out an instant array in a single motion. But the situation was changing far too fast, and Song Yongxiang had no time to deal with the shock in her eyes, because those beasts had already begun pouring into the ship through the breach in the defensive formation. At the same time, the bald bodyguard beside that chubby young master first shoved a Star Soul General talisman into his young master's hands so he could protect himself, then immediately turned and joined the battle to defend the ship. Song Yongxiang had originally been thinking about lending him a hand while watching him struggle alone against the beasts. But right then, the Star-Lord system suddenly sent him a warning. The system had detected that an overwhelmingly dangerous entity, something far beyond Song Yongxiang's current ability to fight, was about to appear near the ship, and it urged him to leave immediately. The moment he heard that, Song Yongxiang's heart sank. If the Star-Lord system was labeling it a super-level threat, then it definitely was not talking about these Bifang-type beasts. Did that mean something above Saint rank was about to appear? The problem was that, at this altitude, Song Yongxiang had no way to safely evacuate this many people. Right now, aside from the copied Lu Bu, he only had 2 other Star Soul General talismans he had picked up. If he had something like Tseo Ren or Bai Qi, the kind of Star Soul General with flight or large-scale transport capabilities, then things would be completely different. With that in mind, Song Yongxiang immediately gave Xiaowen's family 2 choices: either head to the lower deck and take shelter right away, or stay by his side, which meant they would very likely get caught in the battle. Right after that, he turned to Xiaomeng and asked whether the ship had any small escape craft that could be used to get them out. But Xiaomeng could only tell him that there was indeed one such craft on board, and it was reserved exclusively for bridge personnel. After hearing that, Xiaowen's family accepted the plan of retreating to the lower deck for shelter. But at that exact moment, their niece, Shen Ruo, suddenly stepped forward and said that as a Star Soul Master, she could not leave. She had to stay behind and protect everyone. And this time, she also wanted to fight side by side with Song Yongxiang. Meanwhile, that chubby young master's bald bodyguard did not last much longer. Before long, he was beaten flat by the beasts, which honestly showed that his combat strength really was not all that impressive. Even the lower domain duo watching from the side looked a little speechless at that. But for the sake of the ship's overall safety, they had no choice but to put everything else aside, pull out their own Star Soul General talismans, and joined the battle. Just as Bodyguard Wu was about to be struck head-on by a beast's soul power beam, Feige fired off a soul power beam of his own at the critical moment, cutting off the beast's attack and buying Bodyguard Wu a narrow window to breathe. After that, Feige and Bodyguard Wu immediately started working together to gang up on the beast that had broken into the ship. Unfortunately, both of them were only black rank, and there was no way they could break through the beast's defenses head-on with that level of strength. Realizing that, Feige quickly suggested that he draw the beast's attention first, while Bodyguard Wu looked for an opening to land a killing blow from behind. So sure, the two of them were not completely brainless, but not by much either, because they had clearly forgotten one very important thing. There was never just one beast coming in through that breach. Just as Bodyguard Wu found an opening and raised his axe to strike from the rear, another beast suddenly burst in from the side and slammed him flying. Only then did everyone truly realize that the beasts were pouring into the ship non-stop through the crack in the defensive formation, and in the blink of an eye, they had already begun indiscriminately bombarding the inside of the ship with soul power attacks. Faced with that sudden wave of destruction, Miss Jing Hua and Shen Ruowei both immediately constructed their mechs and prepared to block the incoming barrage. Luckily, the number of beasts that had made it inside was still limited for the moment, which meant the bombardment area had not fully spread yet. That was the only reason everyone managed to scrape through this wave without immediate casualties. Even Tang Jinsui's family, who had still been debating whether to head for the lower deck shelter just moments ago, remained safe for the time being inside the defensive array Song Yongxiang had set up. As for that chubby young master, after going through that last round, his legs had gone so weak that he could not even stand anymore. Fortunately, his other bodyguard, a man called Uncle Ma, reacted fast enough to raise his shield and block in front of him. Otherwise, a spoiled young master like that would never survive more than 2 chapters on a real battlefield. After witnessing such brutal fighting with his own eyes, the young master's entire bearing completely collapsed. Even after constructing his mech, he he still sat there on the ground, limp and unable to move. At the end of the day, he was still just a rookie through and through, but the beast did not care whether he was inexperienced or not. One of them suddenly lunged forward and charged straight at the bodyguard protecting him. Meanwhile, the young master himself was still fumbling in a panic, trying to choose and switch weapons without any rhythm at all. Luckily, right before that bodyguard was about to be overwhelmed, the young master finally managed to pick a weapon and rushed over to support him. Maybe bigger people really did have a bit more raw strength, because when he brought that hammer down, the effect was surprisingly decent. At the same time, Song Yongxiang was in the middle of persuading Tang Jinsui's family to give up on the idea of retreating to the lower deck, because under the current circumstances, staying beside him was actually the safer option. After all, they had already missed the best possible evacuation window, so now the only real choice left was to follow Song Yongxiang's plan. Right after that, Song Yongxiang also made it clear that even stronger beasts might appear soon. If things truly got out of control, he would find a way to abandon ship and get them out alive. But the second Tang Jinsui heard that, his bleeding heart side suddenly flared up. He immediately challenged Song Yongxiang, asking whether he really intended to ignore the lives of everyone else on the ship. Then he started preaching about the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. Song Yongxiang could only shake his head inwardly. Sure enough, every era had its fair share of self-righteous saints. And in stories like this, people like that rarely ended well. Thankfully, Tang Jinsui had a sensible wife who stopped him at once. Otherwise, their whole family would probably have ended up walking straight into the same tragedy as in Song Yongxiang's previous life. Maybe because she was afraid her husband's words had offended Song Yongxiang, Shen Dai later hurriedly apologized and assured him that from this point on, their whole family would follow his arrangements completely. Song Yongxiang did not say anything else after that. In the end, they had only boarded this ship because he brought them here. So, no matter how chaotic the situation became from here on out, Song Yongxiang had already made up his mind that their family's safety would come first. At the same time, bad news was breaking out all across the battlefield. On bodyguard Wu's side, he had already been pinned flat to the ground by a beast and could barely move. Fortunately, Feige arrived at the critical moment and landed a sneak attack from behind. The problem was that their weapons simply did not have enough killing power. Even after taking that hit, the beast still managed to twist its head around and strike back. Luckily, Feige had already been ready for that. He drove his sword straight up and punched it clean through the beast's lower jaw. But even after finally killing that one, nobody had any reason to feel relieved, because in the very next second, another beast had already locked onto them. On the other side of the battlefield, Miss Jing Hua and Shen Ruowei were also working together to take down a beast, but this one was far smarter. It kept its distance the whole time, bombarding them with ranged attacks and forcing them to keep dodging non-stop. Because of that, Miss Jing Hua was just a fraction too slow during one evasive step, and got snatched from behind by another beast, which carried her straight into the air. Then, with one vicious motion, it hurled her directly towards Shen Ruowei. The two of them crashed into each other before either could react, and in the next moment, that beast immediately began charging up, preparing to finish them both off with one last strike. Faced with that, neither of them had any time left to respond. At the very last second, a red mechanical arm suddenly shot out from the side and grabbed the beast by the tail. Then it swung with terrifying force, smashing the beast straight down from the air into the ground. Right after that came one brutally clean finishing blow, splitting the beast's skull open on the spot. Watching such a completely one-sided slaughter of a beast, everyone present was so shocked they could barely speak. The whole exchange had happened far too fast for anyone to even think. Only Shen Ruowei, the moment she saw that red mech appear, felt her heart settle instantly, because she knew Song Yongxiang had finally made his move. The hero who had turned the tide in Yuanding City had finally stepped onto the stage. Meanwhile, on the other side, that young master from the Zhang family was currently getting bullied with a beast practically sitting on top of his head. After finishing off the beast attacking Miss Jing Hua and Shen Ruowei, Song Yongxiang immediately noticed what was happening there too. Maybe it was because the way he had butchered its companion had been too brutal, but the beast crouching on young Master Zhang actually froze from a single look from him. Seizing that opening, Song Yongxiang instantly hurled the Skypiercer halberd. With a deafening explosion, the beast was ripped into pieces on the spot by the incoming halberd. By the time young Master Zhang came back to his senses, he stared in disbelief and realized that the hero from the Yuanding City stage play had actually appeared right in front of him. For a moment, he almost wondered whether he had already been scared so badly that he was dreaming. But Song Yongxiang clearly had no time to care what he thought, because beasts were still pouring in from the sky through the breach in the defensive formation. At the current rate, even if the ship's entire security force and every Star Soul Master present were thrown into the fight together, they still might not hold out much longer. Song Yongxiang had originally wanted to save some strength for the hidden danger the Star-Lord system had warned him about, But now it was obvious he no longer had the luxury of holding back. In the next second, Song Yongxiang immediately ordered the Star-Lord system to unlock the Earth-rank armament of Lu Bu's soul armor. Skybreaker Dreadcloud Bow, the strongest long-range weapon in Lu Bu's soul armor arsenal. Its power was monstrous, but so was its soul power consumption. If he had not been pushed to the brink, Song Yongxiang truly would not have wanted to use it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Bodyguard Wu and Feige were being boxed in by 3 beasts, and from the looks of it, both of their soul power reserves were almost exhausted. At the critical moment, several bladed flying rings suddenly appeared around them and slashed toward the beasts at the same time. The instant Feige saw those flying rings, he recognized them. They were the prototype weapons mounted on young Lady Nayla's soul armor. Had the situation really deteriorated so badly that even she had to step in personally? And sure enough, young Lady Nayla had arrived in support, piloting the Lower Domain Nation's newest custom soul armor. Her arrival did help even out the numbers a little, but even then, their side still had no obvious advantage. Right then, Nayla quickly laid out her plan. She would use the flying rings to pin down 2 of the beasts, while Wu and Feige focused everything on killing the isolated one as fast as possible. In response, Bodyguard Wu immediately volunteered to draw the beast's attention head-on and create an opening for Feige to circle behind and strike. Just as they were about to move, a massive beam of soul power suddenly tore across the battlefield and blasted the beast in front of them into chunks. And that attack did not stop there. It kept ripping onward through the battlefield. Every beast it touched exploded on the spot. Not a single one survived. The sight completely short-circuited the 3 of them. The beasts that had been beating them into the dirt just moments ago were suddenly all gone. And on the far end of the battlefield, a towering figure slowly emerged from the sea of smoke. The gigantic arrow of soul power had come from him. No matter how hard Nayla and the others tried, they simply could not understand how the beasts that had been crushing them a second ago were wiped out in the blink of an eye. Bodyguard Wu even started wondering whether his eyes had gone bad, because he could not believe what he had just seen. The lower domain siblings were thinking the exact same thing. That strike had come too fast. In the space of a blink, every beast in front of them had been erased. Once he finally saw the figure clearly, young Master Zhang suddenly cried out that the hero from Yuanding City had come to save them. That shout instantly drew everyone's eyes towards Song Yongxiang. But Song Yongxiang himself was still inwardly annoyed that he had gone a little too hard with that last shot. After all, he had accidentally blasted a huge hole right through the ceiling of the luxury cabin. Still, since most of the luxury cabin passengers were already here, there should not have been any collateral casualties. At that moment, Miss Jing Hua suddenly shouted a warning from behind him, telling him to watch his back. Song Yongxiang spun around, only to find 3 Bifang-type beasts diving at him from behind at the same time. Faced with that, Song Yongxiang immediately ordered the Star-Lord system to unlock Lu Bu's 3rd weapon, Skybreaker Claw. In the next second, the Skybreaker Dreadcloud Bow in Song Yongxiang's hands began to transform. In the blink of an eye, the massive bow reconfigured itself into a vicious mechanical claw. As the saying goes, the dumb bird flies first. The first beast to charge in was instantly seized by Song Yongxiang's timing and sliced clean in half across the waist. The second beast immediately sensed danger and slammed on the brakes in midair. But in front of Song Yongxiang, that only turned it into a perfect stationary target. With another swing of Skybreaker Claw, the beast was effortlessly skewered like a fresh kebab. The third beast had probably never seen anything this horrifying in its life. After watching its companions get butchered like that, it actually turned around and tried to flee on the spot instead of coming any closer. But since it had already shown up, there was no way Song Yongxiang was letting it get away. Before it could climb higher and escape, he leapt after it in a single bound. Then, when he drove the claw through its body, he deliberately avoided every vital point. If that thing wanted to sneak up on him from behind, then it could enjoy the electric torture service built into Skybreaker Claw. Unfortunately for it, the beast's body was a little too flimsy for that treatment. After twitching for just a few moments, it was already fried into a lump of charcoal. As satisfying as it was to slaughter beasts like this, what Song Yongxiang was really worried about was still the super-level threat the Star-Lord system had warned him about. If the system had already detected it, then by all logic, it should be appearing any moment now. At the same time, everyone watching the battle was completely stunned by the sheer overwhelming force of Song Yongxiang's combat power. Even Miss Jing Hua, who was also only a black-rank Star Soul Master, had already stopped thinking about the battle itself, and was instead wondering how she could possibly win Song Yongxiang over to help her achieve her own goals. Meanwhile, Feige, who had clashed with Song Yongxiang before, was now trembling as he quietly asked Nayla whether that terrifying man really was the senior from Heavenly Cabin No. 1. Nayla answered without the slightest hesitation. Yes, he was. The moment Feige got confirmation, his scalp went numb. Looking back now, that earlier conflict felt downright terrifying. If he had actually dared to fight back then, his end probably would have looked just like the beasts. Nayla showed him no mercy either. She immediately mocked him and said that if she had not stepped in to smooth things over back then, next weekend would probably have been the day of his memorial rites. Although the immediate crisis had been pushed back for the moment, the truth was that this ship did not have much time left. Because while everyone was still reeling in shock, even more beasts had already begun swarming into the vessel through the breach. And at the same time, the command room received the worst news yet. The grand defensive array was on the verge of collapse. At most, it would hold for another 10 breaths. Worse still, no reinforcements had arrived. Faced with that situation, the captain could only grit his teeth and order the communications officers to continue blasting distress signals over every frequency. But at that exact moment, one of the beasts locked onto the ship's command room and charged straight at it. Left with no other choice, the captain immediately ordered everyone to evacuate the bridge. Yet, just as the beast was about to smash through the command room glass, another crimson mechanical arm suddenly shot out and seized it by the throat. In the next instant, a single casual slash cut through it, splitting the beast neatly into two halves. The people inside the bridge, who had just survived a split-second brush with death, all found themselves thinking the same thing. Could this Red Star Soul General really belong to one of the passengers on this flight? And then, one of the crew members standing beside the captain suddenly cried out in disbelief. Wasn't that the very hero from Yuanding City who had been all over the news? How could someone of that level actually be on their ship? Meanwhile, the battle at the bow had already turned brutally desperate. At a glance, only 2 security officers were still barely holding the line. To protect the massive number of passengers aboard the airship, this security captain had clearly already made peace with fighting to the very end. They might have been nothing more than low-status security men in the eyes of others, but like countless ordinary people, they were still the pillars holding up their families. To calm the younger guard beside him, the captain even forced a relaxed tone and told him that Hong Merchant Guild would never mistreat its own. If they died here, the compensation money alone would at least let their families live without worrying about food or clothes. Hearing his captain say that much, the younger guard could only grit his teeth and force down the fear in his heart. So when the next wave of beasts came surging in again, he chose to meet them head-on. Unfortunately, his marksmanship was terrible. The beast in the air did not even bother dodging as it rushed straight through his fire. Seeing that, the captain had no choice but to shove the younger guard violently out of the way, while he himself turned to face the beast's direct charge. And just as the beast was about to follow up with a killing blow, the captain's expression turned strangely calm. Because he knew that if he died here, the compensation would finally pay off the crushing debts back home. Maybe this would be the last thing he could ever do for his family. But at the very instant between life and death, a crimson sky-piercer halberd ripped through the air once again. At the same time, a massive Red Star Soul General appeared behind him. Maybe fate really had not abandoned him yet, because Song Yunxiang had arrived at exactly that moment. But when Song Yunxiang looked up into the sky, his expression did not ease in the slightest. Above them, the heavens were still packed with Bifang-type beasts. If he had something like Cao Ren or Ao Bing right now, one of those Star Soul Generals better suited for battlefield control, air dominance, or large-scale suppression, things would be far easier. Song Yunxiang quickly counted the beasts overhead. In just that short span of time, more than 20 had already gathered. In that case, there was only one thing left to do: test out the combo he had recently developed. The Sky-Piercer halberd that Song Yunxiang hurled with full force carved a sharp, perfect arc across the night sky, and that arc kept flying deeper and deeper into the densest cluster of beasts above. At the same time, Song Yunxiang once again summoned Lu Bu's Skybreaker Dreadcloud bow, then aimed directly at the flying Sky-Piercer halberd and fired a massive beam of soul power straight into it. Once the two attacks merged in midair, the crystal in the Sky-Piercer halberd refracted the energy, splitting that soul power beam into multiple streams that blasted every beast within range at the same time. In an instant, the sky was swallowed by non-stop explosions, and the whole scene looked almost like a New Year fireworks show. Even the 2 surviving security officers were completely stunned. They probably could not have dreamed up a combo like that, even if they spent their whole lives trying. But before anyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the area was surrounded by beasts all over again. This time, they had clearly learned their lesson. They knew getting close meant certain death, so they stayed on the perimeter and prepared to destroy the entire airship with long-range attacks instead. Worse still, several of the larger beasts had probably already reached Earth rank or above. Could those be the threat the Star-Lord system had detected earlier? Even if Song Yunxiang could get everyone through this next wave alive, there was no guarantee the airship itself would survive. And at an altitude like this, if the vessel lost power, the consequences would be catastrophic. Luckily, at the most critical moment, a barrage of dense artillery fire suddenly erupted from the distant sky. The beasts surrounding them were instantly swallowed by that bombardment. The ones coming to reinforce them were none other than the Song Army's Ruhu-class Skyguard warships. At that moment, the main screen in the ship's command room lit up with the image of a fierce female general. She immediately ordered the Hong airship to disengage and withdraw from the combat zone at once. With the arrival of those two Skyguard warships from the Song family's Scarlet Luan army, the collapsing battlefield finally eased up a little. The pilots aboard the Hong airship were thrilled when they saw the reinforcements arrive. The captain, on the other hand, was still staring blankly at the screen, completely unable to understand why the Song army, which should have been stationed along the southern frontier, had suddenly appeared here. Had they really come specifically to save them? One of the communications officers overheard the captain muttering to himself and immediately said he was probably overthinking it. Most likely, the Song army had just finished a mission and happened to be passing through. Hearing that, the captain finally forced himself back into focus and immediately ordered the airship to drop its defenses and redirect all available power into the engines. Right now, their top priority was to get out of this airspace as fast as possible. At the same time, standing at the bow, Song Yongxiang was also looking up at the Song army ships that had come to support them. If he was not mistaken, that should be the Scarlet Luan army, the elite force personally founded by his eldest sister, Song Yunjin, a military unit made up entirely of female generals. Had the Song family really gone this far just to bring him home? They had actually sent two Skyguard warships from the Scarlet Luan army. And sure enough, inside one of those warships, Uncle Song Mu was standing beside the officer in command, watching the situation unfold. Meanwhile, that female general was openly saying she could hardly believe that the young Marquis would actually travel aboard such a shabby civilian vessel. The former leader of the four great playboys had suddenly become this low-key? Uncle Song Mu could only answer with a helpless smile, saying that people did grow up eventually. Maybe the young Marquis really had changed. And then he specifically reminded the general to take a good look at the Red Star Soul general standing at the bow of that civilian ship. The female general only needed one glance before recognizing it immediately. It was the powerhouse from Yuanding City, the very man reported in the news to have saved the second prince. Hearing that, she could not help saying that the young Marquis must really have had luck pouring from his ancestors' graves this time. To end up on the same ship as that kind of expert? Even if he was still the same useless man, his luck was insanely good. She even said outright that if that Red Star Soul general had not been here, that civilian vessel never would have lasted until their arrival. Hearing her talk about his young master like that, Uncle Song Mu could only close his eyes in silence. He was thinking that if they ever found out the mighty expert they were talking about was actually the waste young master Yongxiang, they would probably be shocked senseless. Meanwhile, at the bow of the Hong airship, Song Yongxiang was just about to tell the security officers to pull back and recover while he returned to the central court to regroup with everyone else. But at that exact moment, the Star-Lord system suddenly issued another warning. In 5 seconds, an ultra-scale rift will emerge. Host must leave the current airspace within 5 seconds. That warning genuinely shook Song Yongxiang. Could it be that even the arrival of 2 Skyguard warships was still not enough to resolve this crisis? Just what kind of monster was about to come out of that rift? Meanwhile, back in the airship's central court, the guests from the luxury cabins had already gathered together again. Feige, the one from the lower domain nation, was actually still complimenting young Master Zhang on his performance in the fight just now. Naila, on the other hand, was already calmly calculating how much full coverage safety insurance compensation would be worth. Elsewhere, Miss Jing Hua was also sincerely thanking Shenrue. If Shenrue had not stepped in to help just now, Miss Jing Hua probably would have been seriously injured by now. But right as they were all still talking, Song Yongxiang suddenly rushed back in while piloting Lu Bu's Star Soul General and landed directly in front of everyone. The instant he arrived, he urgently swallowed 3 soul-replenishing pills in a row to force his soul power back up. Then, without wasting a single extra word, he immediately told Tang Jinshui's family and Shenrue to take Xiaowen and come with him right now. But just as he finished speaking, the beasts that had been gathered together in the sky suddenly scattered in all directions, as though they had received some kind of command. The moment Song Yongxiang saw that, his heart sank. He knew there was no time left. The super-level threat the Star-Lord system had warned him about had probably already arrived. Sure enough, in the next second, the sky itself looked as though it were being torn apart by force, and a colossal dimensional rift burst open. Then, deep inside that rift, rows of gigantic crimson eyes slowly lit up. And the owner of those eyes was a Kun-type beast so massive that even the Skyguard warships looked tiny by comparison. Faced with that sight, Song Yongxiang genuinely could not understand it. Why would a god-rank Kun-type beast appear here today of all places? Could it really be because he had accidentally altered Miss Jing Hua's path just now and triggered some absurd deviation in fate? This was truly over. The legends had not exaggerated at all. This thing was like an entire airborne city. Compared to it, these few ships were nothing more than insects. Against a god-rank beast, these little vessels were not even enough to get stuck between its teeth. Was everyone here really destined to die in this sky tonight? The moment she saw it appear, even the female commander of the Scarlet Luon army turned pale with shock. But Uncle Song-mu, standing beside her, looked strangely less surprised. He even murmured under his breath, "Could this be the beast the third madam once prophesied?" At the same time, the Star-Lord system had already calculated a retreat route for Song Yongxiang. Faced with something like this, retreat seemed to be the only realistic option left. Given the current strength of the Eastern continent, the only ones capable of threatening a god-rank beast like this were probably those two god-rank patriarchs. But even then, Song Yongxiang could still sense another deeply abnormal soul power fluctuation coming from this Kun-type beast, and the state it was in clearly looked wrong. What exactly was going on with it? Before he could make sense of it, the beast had already begun drawing in a massive breath and gathering power. The instant he saw that, Song Yongxiang shouted for everyone to cover their ears, while at the same time pulling out a 5th-rank isolation array and preparing to activate it. Almost the very moment his warning ended, the beast let out a roar so devastating it felt like it could shatter heaven and earth. That single roar made the entire surrounding space tremble, and woven into the sound was its overwhelming soul power pressure. The weaker security officers were instantly shaken until blood burst from all 7 orifices. Under suppression at this level, ordinary Star Soul Masters had no hope of fighting back. Many of them could not even keep their Star Soul constructs active. Thankfully, the luxury passengers in the central court were at least somewhat protected by the isolation array Song Yongxiang had managed to put up in time. This damned god-rank beast was absurd. It had only let out a single roar, and yet the damage was already this overwhelming. If it actually got serious, everyone here would probably be wiped out in an instant. At the same time, aboard one of the Scarlet Luon Army's Skyguard warships, Uncle Song-mu was holding up a heaven-rank gang chi barrier to shield the female commander from the shockwave of the god-rank beast's roar. When she saw that, the female commander initially thought the beast had already launched a direct attack, but Song-mu grimly told her that what they had just experienced was only the Kun-type beast's most ordinary roar. That answer made her scalp go numb. A sound wave so catastrophic it felt world-ending. And that was only a casual roar? If that monster let out a few more like that, every last one of them would die here. Song-mu could only nod with a heavy expression. He admitted that if the beast roared one more time, even he might not be able to keep holding on. Their only chance now was to interrupt it the moment it drew in breath to charge up again. After hearing Song-mu's judgment, the female commander no longer dared hesitate and immediately ordered the portside cannons to lock onto the Kun-type beast. Against a target that enormous accuracy was no longer the issue. Everyone was simply waiting for her command to fire. But just as she was about to give the order, Song Yongxiang finally forced his way into their communications channel and sternly told them to stop at once. To make sure they understood he was not rambling blindly, Song Yongxiang chose not to hide anything any longer and directly revealed his true identity. The moment she saw his face, the female commander froze. No matter how she looked at it, she could not understand why that infamous, useless young master was inside the cockpit of that Red Star Soul general. As the one who already knew the truth, Uncle Song-mu immediately added that he had come under the old Marquis's direct orders, bringing the warships here to escort young Master Yongxiang home. The words, "come home," hit Song Yongxiang harder than he expected. Ever since his previous life, he had not truly heard those words in what felt like an eternity. Even he felt his heart tremble for a moment, but this was clearly no time for sentiment. Song Yongxiang quickly forced his emotions down and immediately ordered them to shut the cannon ports, because with their current level of strength, there was no way they could truly threaten a peak god-rank beast like this. But based on the nature of Kun-type beasts, as long as they did not openly display hostility, then in its eyes, they were nothing more than a few tiny flying insects. And as long as those insects did not try to bite it first, it normally would not bother wasting effort hunting them down. After persuading the Scarlet Luon army, Song Yongxiang immediately linked up with the captain of the Hong merchant vessel as well, and ordered him to follow his instructions without exception. At the same time, he commanded that every Star Soul Master aboard all 3 ships immediately cancel their constructs, shut down all propulsion systems, and let the entire formation enter free fall. Only after they had fully dropped out of the god-rank beast's alert range would they restart all engines at once and flee this airspace at full speed. This was the only way anyone here was getting out alive. If they wanted to survive, they had to follow his orders exactly. And so, the moment Song Yongxiang's countdown ended, all 3 airships simultaneously cut power and plunged into a powerless free fall from the sky. At that moment, out of everyone present, Song Yongxiang alone maintained his Star Soul construct, and he was even using his own soul power to drag along the passengers behind him, who had no time to disengage safely. As he fell, Song Yongxiang was also rapidly calculating the current altitude and the edge of that Kun-type beast detection range. Only by fully leaving that creature's perception zone could any of them hope to live. But soon he realized he had still overlooked one thing. Just because the largest god-rank beast was not making a move did not mean the smaller beasts would leave them alone. And sure enough, it did not take long before the Baifang-type beasts closed in again from above. If they were caught by those things during the free fall, the consequences would be unimaginable. At the most critical moment, Song Yongxiang's voice rang out through the ship-wide broadcast once again. He ordered all 3 vessels to restart their engines at full power immediately and break through toward the 316 direction. The moment that order came through, the commanding officers aboard the ships did not dare hesitate even a little, and immediately ordered their pilots to carry it out. Even though they had temporarily escaped the greatest threat, whether they could truly shake off the Baifang-type beasts still chasing them remained uncertain. At this point, all they could do was hope that they would somehow survive this with more fright than harm. Even with all 3 airships pushing their soul-powered engines to maximum output, they still could not shake off the beast chasing behind them. And to make matters worse, at the worst possible moment, the Hong Merchant Guild's airship suddenly developed a power source shortage, and its flight speed began to drop noticeably. At that instant, the captain's heart truly sank. He did not even need to think about it. Too much energy must have been burned earlier while sustaining the defensive arrays. They had barely managed to escape the threat of that god-rank beast, and now the ship chose this exact, critical moment to drop the ball. Of course, the Scarlet Luan army noticed the anomaly on the Hong vessel's side immediately, so the female commander made the call without hesitation, ordering Ship 2 to immediately fire boarding cables at the Hong airship and forcefully tow them along. Matter what, they absolutely could not abandon those defenseless passengers here. Not long after her order was given, several heavy boarding lines shot out in succession, directly piercing through the armor on both sides of the Hong vessel and locking on tightly. The Hong captain, entirely unaware of what was actually happening, thought the beast had finally caught up to them. He instantly ordered everyone to enter combat readiness on the spot. Even if they really could not escape, they absolutely would not just sit there and wait to die. But almost right after he gave the order, his assistant beside him quickly pointed out that the ship's current speed was actually increasing again. It did not look like they had been attacked by beasts at all. Hearing that, the captain finally let out a slight sigh of relief. At least, for the moment, he would not have to drag the entire ship into a bloody fight to the death. But unfortunately, good news and bad news always came tied together. Precisely because of the towing link, the speed of the Scarlet Luan army warships themselves was noticeably dragged down. As a result, a group of high-rank Bifang-type beasts soon seized the opportunity to close in on the rear of the entire fleet. What was more troublesome was that they could not use the main ship cannons right now, because once they fired, it would divert a portion of the power away from the thrusters, and that would only make the fleet's overall speed even slower. Seeing this situation, the female commander immediately ordered the Weiyuan combat squads aboard to deploy, directing all of them to head to the lift platforms to engage the beasts. Upon receiving the order, the female soldiers on the ship did not hesitate in the slightest, and immediately sprang into action. Soon, one after another, red-painted Weiyuan soul armors were sent up to the combat positions at the bow by the lift platforms. Although the Scarlet Luan army was a military force made up entirely of women, their combat power was not the slightest bit inferior to any other elite unit. Under the swift organization of the squad leader, these female soldiers quickly formed a 3-line firing formation, facing the swarm of plunging beasts head-on. Those beasts had barely entered firing range when they slammed headfirst into a barrage of firepower so dense it bordered on madness. Unfortunately, the standard red Weiyuan armors they piloted were ultimately better suited for ground combat, and they inherently suffered a significant disadvantage in aerial warfare. So before long, the defensive formation built up at the bow of Ship 2 was still forcibly torn open by those beasts using near-suicidal impact charges. What had initially been a fairly orderly ranged suppression battle instantly deteriorated into a brutal close-quarters melee. Seeing this, the female commander immediately ordered the squad on Ship 1 to divert half their firepower to support their sisters on Ship 2. The effect of this order was almost instantaneous. With Ship 1's firepower cutting in, the previously precarious combat situation on Ship 2's side was immediately alleviated by more than half. Seeing the situation stabilize slightly, the squad leader at the bow of Ship 2 immediately seized the opportunity, ordering everyone to quickly clear the beasts off the deck and reorganize the defensive formation as fast as possible. Hearing their captain's command, all the female soldiers surged forward almost simultaneously, charging head-on into the beast swarm to slaughter them. But right at this most critical moment, another batch of Bifang-type beasts suddenly appeared directly above the bow. Upon spotting them, the squad leader had just opened her mouth to shout the order for everyone to immediately form a turtle shell defensive formation. But in the very instant before her command was fully out, a massive beam of soul power slashed across the sky, instantly wiping clean the entire swarm of beasts right above their heads. As the young master of the Song family, how could Song Yongxiang possibly just stand by and watch the female generals of the Song family fight a desperate battle alone? So at this moment, he had already raised Lu Bu's Skybreaker Dreadcloud bow once again, providing long-range cover for their battle from the rear of the fleet. But the soul power consumption of that weapon was downright outrageous. Song Yongxiang had barely fired a single shot before he had to swallow another soul-replenishing pill just to refill himself. And of course, the timing could not have been worse. That overwhelming display just now had pulled a huge number of beasts' attention straight onto him. Faced with that, Song Yongxiang had no choice but to deliberately dial down the Skybreaker Dreadcloud bow's power and switch to rapid successive shots to keep the situation under control. Fortunately, the weapon's base power was still terrifying. Even with its output suppressed, it was more than enough to one-shot beasts of this level. At the same time, Uncle Song Mu and the female commander were watching Song Yongxiang's battle from inside the Skyguard warship's command room. Looking at the strength Song Yongxiang was displaying now, the female general simply could not make sense of it. No matter how hard she tried. She could not understand how the useless young master everyone once looked down on had become this terrifying. Ever since the beast assault began, the battle had already dragged on for a long time. The merchant ship's original security force had suffered such devastating losses that it was practically no longer combat effective. Meanwhile, Song Yongxiang had to stay at the bow to support the Scarlet Luan army, which meant he could not spare the attention to defend the stern of the merchant ship for now. With no better option, young Master Zhang forced himself to step up and organize the Star Soul Masters from the VIP cabins, who were still capable of fighting, sending them to hold the rear. After surviving several life-and-death clashes, they had finally started to build some rough teamwork. The three groups temporarily formed a triangular formation. Young Master Zhang's side, along with the Miss Jing Hua Shen Ruowei pair, took charge of defense and kiting. As for the main damage output, that was being carried almost entirely by the lower domain duo. Feige stayed at range, constantly pressuring the beast and driving them step by step into the effective range of Nayla's soul armor. Then Nayla used her 3 sets of golden moon rings to harvest them in carefully timed bursts. But right when everyone was fighting at full intensity, the god-rank beast behind the fleet suddenly turned its gaze toward this side of the battlefield. And the moment its eyes swept across them, the Bifang-type beasts circling overhead all stopped attacking at once. That sudden shift instantly froze everyone at the stern. No one knew what was about to happen next. Then that colossal Kun-type beast let out another deep roar that echoed across the heavens. The moment that sound reached them, the Bifang-type beasts above immediately began turning around and flying back toward it. Seeing that, everyone finally dared to let out a breath, because the beasts were clearly withdrawing from the battlefield at high speed. That desperately needed piece of good news quickly made its way back to the Scarlet Luan Army's command room. After hearing the report from her subordinates, the female commander finally released a long breath of relief. Song Yongxiang also finally let the tension in his nerves loosen just a little, because this meant they had truly made it out of the god-rank beast's alert range. This time, he had really managed to bring everyone out alive. The tragedy of his previous life had not repeated itself after all. As far as this narrow escape was concerned, Uncle Song Mu did not hesitate for even a second before crediting all of it to Song Yongxiang. Because he knew very well that if Song Yongxiang had not been there, there was absolutely no way any of them would have gotten away from that god-rank beast alive. That only made the female commander even more curious. She truly could not understand how Song Yongxiang had known the habits of that beast so well. Unfortunately, Song Yongxiang had no energy left to answer any of that. He was exhausted to the core, and, more than anything else, just wanted to find a place and crash hard. After saying that, he dragged his utterly drained body back toward the others step by step. Only after confirming that everyone was still safe did Song Yongxiang finally let his guard down and pass out on the spot. In order not to disturb his rest, Shen Ruowei even kept reminding Feige and the others to keep their voices down. Watching that scene, Miss Jing Hua could not help but smile as well, the tension finally easing from her face. After everyone returned to Heavenly Cabin Number 1, the others silently bowed toward the unconscious Song Yongxiang in gratitude before quietly leaving one by one. After some more time passed in flight, Song Yongxiang was finally awakened by the ship-wide broadcast, and when he opened his eyes, he discovered that Shen Ruowei had somehow fallen asleep, leaning against the edge of his bed. Looking at her sleepy, clearly exhausted face, Song Yongxiang could tell that this journey had worn her down just as badly. He had no idea how long he had been asleep, but judging from the situation, they were probably almost there. Song Yongxiang could not help murmuring to himself, "Yong'an City, the Song family. I'm finally back." But at the very moment their airship entered Yong'an City's airspace, a pair of eyes on the ground was already watching them in secret. The man in the lead even joked with his subordinates that they had taken so long to arrive that he had nearly fallen asleep waiting. His men quickly explained that traffic on the way had delayed them and asked the boss not to blame them. The man did not seem angry at all. He casually waved it off and then corrected them with a serious face, saying that from now on they were not to call him big brother or boss anymore. Their White Dragon Gang was now a respectable organization, so from this day forward, they were to address him properly as Guildmaster. Right after that, he made sure to remind all his men of one very important fact. He, Sun Xia, was destined to become one of Tiandu's 8 generals and the strongest Star Soul Master of his era. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river. The next age, without question, would belong to Sun Xia. After finishing that grandiose little speech, he raised the ring hanging around his neck and quietly asked, "Elder Du, when exactly am I going to get the Star Soul General Cao Ren?" The ring answered his question almost immediately. Very soon. That opportunity belonged to Sun Xia, and it also belonged to him.